Honorable members, I wish to announce that the vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Mr. G. McKay has been filled by the nomination of Ms. G. S.A. Ngwenya with effect from the 20th February 2018. The vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Mr. P. Mabilo has been filled by the nomination of Mr. A. Waters with effect from the 21st February. The vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Ms. D. Manana has been filled by the nomination of Mr. D. D. Mabuza with effect from 26 February 2018. The vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly due to the passing of Mr. T. J. Bonhomme has been filled by the nomination of Mr. Z. L. Mkize with effect from the 26th February. Honorable members, I wish to also announce that Mr. N. M. Nene has been nominated with effect from the 26th February 2018. He is filling the vacancy to which Mr. E. S. Mchunu had been nominated but did not take up his seat in the National Assembly. The vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Dr. B. Khoza has been filled by the nomination of Mr. N. T. Nhleko with effect from the 26th February 2018. The vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly due to the passing of Ms. B. T. Ngobo has been filled by the nomination of Ms. N. P. Nkonyeni with effect from the 26th February. The vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Mr. J. J. Skosana has been filled by the nomination of Ms. M. R. Mahaule with effect from the 26th February 2018. Lastly, the vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Mr. T. Manyoni has been filled by the nomination of Mr. N. Kaba with effect from the 26th February 2018. Honorable members, the members have made and subscribed the oath and affirmation in the Speaker's office. And honorable members, I welcome you to the National Assembly and to Parliament.
Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Lozi.
Thank you, Speaker. We want to welcome Mr. Nhlanhla from the BRICS Bank, where he was nominated by Mr. Zuma. Welcome back, Chief.
I've already done that on your behalf. The first item on the order paper is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, the Honorable Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move that the following items that were on the order paper and which, in terms of rules 333 and 351, lapsed at the end of the last sitting day of the 2017 annual session be revived. 1, consideration of the report of the Portfolio Committee on Environmental Affairs on Maritime Spatial Planning Bill. 2, second reading debate, Maritime Special Planning Bill. 3, second reading debate, Political Party Funding Bill. 4, consideration of the report of the Portfolio Committee on Communications on Films and Publications Amendment Bill. 5, second reading debate, Films and Publication Amendment Bill. 6, consideration of the report of the Standing Committee on Finance on special report of Public Protector on the implementation of remedial action contained in the Public Protector's report number 18 of 2011-12 on maladministration during the privatization of vendor pension fund, which is report number 15 of 2016-17. Consideration of the report of the Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation on oversight visit to Limpopo Province. Consideration of the report of the Portfolio Committee on Tourism on oversight visit to Limpopo Province. Consideration of the report of Portfolio Committee on Tourism on oversight visit to the Western Cape Province. Consideration of the Portfolio Committee report on economic development on oversight visits to Mpumalanga and Gauteng. 11, consideration of the report of Portfolio Committee on mineral resources on oversight visit to Gauteng. I so move.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, Honourable
Madam Speaker, it just
Steenhuisen.
relates to the item on the party funding bill. I'm not convinced it was on the order paper for a second reading in the last term. But I think we all agreed that we'd revive the bill, but that it would go to the committee for one more session with Treasury and then return to us for a second reading.
Yes, the ad hoc committee, I think we agreed this in the National Assembly Program Committee. The ad hoc committee will be set up tomorrow, and then we will take it to the ad hoc committee. So the motion has been agreed to. The secretary will read the first and second orders together.
Consideration of the report of the Portfolio Committee on Communications on the oversight visit to Government Communication and Information System, Department of Communications, as well as its reporting entities. Consideration of the report of the Portfolio Committee on Communications on the oversight visit to KwaZulu-Natal Province.
The Honorable Maxekwana.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon, members. I'm tabling two reports from the Portfolio Committee on Communications, the oversight reports. The first report is that of our visit to GCIS. We met everybody there, including the staff, and the major problem that we came across in the main in GCIS is the utilization of our government communication, which is not used by departments. I think that's the problem that we have as in GCIS. Only few departments are utilizing the government communication. The last thing in GCIS is the problem of funding. I think we know that their budget is too small, and therefore they are not able to deal with all their responsibilities. However, the provincial offices are doing their best as we visited some of them. That's the first report. The second report is that of our visit to KZN. Major problem in our community radios in KZN is media development and diversity. I think what the committee says is that government is pumping money in the bottomless pit so money is going down the drain as there is nothing that is of benefit in most of the community radios that we visited there. But what is important in the visit in KZN and in Gauteng is that we are now going to kickstart the investigation in MDDA of wrongdoing by some members of the board. So that process is kickstarting very soon. Same as we did in SABC. The visit was an eye-opener in this committee. So we're going to fast-track the process in both MDDA and in some areas in KZN. According to our visit in ICASA, the major problem also there was the suspension of licenses as the committee and the entity were dealing with that, and all those matters are reflected in the report that we have tabled, and this is an October 2017 report. I just want to table both reports for consideration by the House, and the matters that I've raised to be dealt with by the committee, and those are the responsibilities of Parliament. Parliament will deal with them. Thank you very much.
I am now recognizing the Deputy Chief Whip, but I see she's not in the room. Because she must move that the reports be adopted.
Thank you, and we are so sorry, Speaker. I move that the report be adopted.
Are there any objections?
No, Speaker,
Yes, Honorable Waters.
the DA would like to make a declaration, please. Thank you.
Okay, you would like to make a declaration?
Geagte voorsitter en lede van die huis, gedurende vandag se sitting is ons deeglik bewus daarvan dat ons in die afgelope 11 maande 4 verskillende ministers van kommunikasie gehad het en dat dit politieke onsekerheid en skade veroorsaak het aan die departement van kommunikasie en sy verskeie entiteite. Dit is duidelik dat die konstante herskommeling van die kabinet negatiewe gevolge gehad het op die funksionering van die departement. We still face various concerns at the GCIS, and we reiterate our previous calls that communications from the GCIS stay independent and free from favour and political interference. The MDDA has over the past year faced massive problems. These problems include allegations of corruption, intimidation and victimization of employees and various other major concerns pertaining to the MDDA board and the previous chairperson of the board. On numerous occasions, I raised my concerns over these happenings at the embattled entity. During Ms. Nkoma's destructive tenure at the MDDA, her salary more than doubled in a single financial year without any reason. We know that Ms. Nkoma's tenure has now come to an end, but that doesn't prevent us from taking civil and criminal action due to her corrupt behaviour. We as the Communications Committee should continue investigation and hold this person accountable for her actions. As 'n parlementêre komitee moet ons dit duidelik maak dat die belastingbetaler se geld nie voorts gemors sal word op korrupte individue nie. Dit is van kernbelang dat ons gemeenskap media ondersteun en ontwikkel om as spreekbuis op te tree vir 'n reuse aantal diverse stemme. Die DA sal voortdurend veg vir die regte van gemeenskap media en die bevordering daarvan. It is worrying that staff at ICASA had to go on strike in order to be listened to by council and executive management. We further don't agree with the arrogant stance by the ICASA council and executive management in relation to the concerns raised by ICASA employees. We do want to applaud the decision taken by the Communications Committee today in relation to start proceedings to remove the current chairperson of the ICASA Council after he was found guilty of fraud. Dit is egter problematies dat 'n persoon van die formaat in die eerste plek aangestel is. Ten spyte van die DA se besware ten opsigte van die aanstelling, is dit steeds deur die ANC deurgedruk. Die DA is veral geskok dat die FPB Appelraad se onlangse besluit om die enclave as pornografie te verklaar en voel dat hierdie 'n direkte onderdrukking van 'n grondwetlike reg is. Die DA sal heelhartig pogings ondersteun om hierdie onbillike en onredelike besluit op hersiening te neem. Ten spyte van die harde werk van die nuwe SABC-raad, is die DA steeds bekommerd oor die huidige stand van sake by die SABC. Dit is duidelik dat werknemers by die SABC steeds ongelukkig is, dat daar steeds sprake van intimidasie is en dat daar nog geen einde is aan die finansiële probleme van die uitsaaier nie. Terwyl ons die raad bedank vir die werk wat tot dusver gedoen is daar steeds 'n reeks probleme wat dringend aangespreek moet word. Gegrond op ons besoeke aan die verskeie entiteite en ons besoek aan KwaZulu-Natal, is dit duidelik dat daar steeds talle probleme reg oor die spektrum is van ons departement. Die Demokratiese Alliansie sien uit om hierdie jaar die reeks probleme aan te spreek en om te verseker dat die regering en die relevante rolspelers aanspreeklik gehou word. Baie dankie.
Honorable Josie.
Honorable Speaker, we did form part of the KZN visit, which combined COSI FM, GCIS, and MDDA support programs like One KZN TV. In relation to UCOSI, they welcomed the inquiry by Parliament into SABC, which had been completely destroyed by Hlaudi, Mutambi, in their reign, to make sure that the SABC broadcast in the interest of Mr. Zuma. They also welcomed the efforts for the restructuring of the SABC board because that supported them for their own revival, although their numbers had remained relatively high. We also visited a lot of community media. MDDA, in our view, is completely dysfunctional, and this is why we have to reject the report, because it's our view that the MDDA board must be disbanded and a new board constituted. That organization is completely dysfunctional. They do not support community media. They just throw money at them and then disappear. But also the money that comes to them at the beginning of the year, budgets are approved, but about 30% of the money only shows up, yet the money is not in the system. Local media is at the coalface of things like service delivery. It can be key to the report of corruption at the level of local state and holding those state activities accountable. So it is under-supported, and as a result, there's no accountability at the local level. We have no hope with the bringing of Nomvula Mokonyane into this department, because with the same drought that she caused in the water department, she's going to cause more dysfunctionality in the communications department. We have no hope. That's why we also reject both the report and her appointment as minister.
Honorable Speaker,
Order. Yes, Honorable.
I rise on Rule 85 that when a member of this House is being addressed, he has to be called a member, not Nomvula Monkonyane.
Nomvula Mukonyane is not a member of parliament. I would give that information for free to the ANC caucus. She's not a member of parliament. Okay, thank you.
On a point of order, sir.
Yes, Honorable Khatem.
Honorable Mukwenyana is a minister of this.
Let it go, Honorable Khatem.
Speaker, that's why German Card didn't get promotion.
Honorable Tengwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I rise on behalf of my colleague, Honorable van der Merwe. At the outset, Madam Speaker, let us raise our concern about the fact that the instability in terms of political leadership in this department and by extension to its entities has caused a lot of problems. Since 2014, you've had Minister Mtambi, Minister Dlodlo, Minister Kupai Ngubane, and now Minister Mokonyane. So the question then becomes, what type of stability is going to be in those entities if every reshuffle is aligned with ensuring that Department of Communications is affected? This causes problems. As you can see in the SABC, staff morale is down. You look at ICASA, staff morale is down. Look at the MDDA, staff morale is down. There's a constant jostling of positions in boards, which of course in itself adds fuel to the fire. The problems therein of course mean that accountability is compromised, and that every time a new minister comes in, they come in with new ideas, they come in with new plans, and you're expecting boards, you are expecting the staff to then change tack, you're expecting staff to find their feet under a new administration every time. Honourable Speaker, from this very podium, the IFP did warn the ANC against the appointment of Mr. Motoloka to serve on ICASA, but you did not listen. What happened? He was found guilty, and now we have to deal with that mess. Had you listened then, we would not be in this crisis that we find ourselves in currently. Honourable Speaker, we are also concerned about the fact that the SABC continues to find itself on the back foot. Whilst there are green shoots of some hope, it is our expectation, however, that the SABC must be restored to being a public broadcaster and not a state broadcaster, as we have seen over the years, where it does the bidding of the ANC and particularly those who hold high office in that organization. Madam Speaker, we want to commend the work that is being done by the Portfolio Committee, who have diligently executed their duties to ensure that they hold those who have been deployed to these positions of work accountable. We also want to ensure that moving forward, the collective interests of workers are taken care of. At the SABC, for example, the staff are literally just scared of anybody who smells politics, simply because reign of terror, which has characterized their daily lives, has made them despondent. It has wreaked havoc at the SABC. We have seen it run down, and we're hoping that the new board, of course, is equal to the task, and they will build on the gains which were made by the interim board, which lasted there for 6 months. Of course, all these entities need to get their finances in order so that we do not throw financial solutions to non-financial problems. The fundamental issue is financial management and good governance. I thank you.
The NFP, Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Allow me to start off by congratulating all the ministers and deputy ministers that on behalf of the National Freedom Party. Allow me also to acknowledge the role played by one of our freedom fighters, Robert Sobukwe, for the role that he played in the liberation of our people of South Africa. Honorable Speaker, yes, indeed, it is correct that when there's instability in the department, it has an effect. It has an effect to such an extent that many of us cannot even see when the media themselves are captured. Now, Honorable Speaker, the oversight visit to the community radio station once again uncovered the challenges we face in South Africa with white monopoly capitalists. Big business are either refusing or failing to support these community radio stations. They will not advertise in the small media houses in order to control that media space. We further acknowledge the observation that there is very little interaction between government and community broadcasters. We welcome the recommendation that government communication information services must assist local government to make greater use of the local media in the quest to deliver services to the people at local level. Honorable Speaker, let us be honest. The media in South Africa is captured to the extent that whilst there is supposed to be a freedom of speech and diversity, the media should be serving the interest of all South Africans. Many of them continue to marginalize smaller political parties. They continue to provide selective reporting, and that is evident by the fact that in most instances, what you will find is only negative reporting, despite the fact that South Africa can boast of numerous successes. I heard some of my colleagues in the media complaining as to how the larger media houses, despite all the invitations, will not cover their programs. And when a media house wants to be objective and provide fair and transparent reporting, then this white monopoly capitalists want to close them down. One such media house is the ANN7, which uncovered serious challenges in government which not even this House and members of Parliament and all its oversight mechanisms could have established, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, let us not forget about the collusion between Naspers and MultiChoice with the apartheid regime and who now want to shut those doors of the ANN7. This indeed, Honourable Speaker, must be addressed. We call ourselves to be not to be held to ransom any longer by those colluding with the white monopoly capitalists. We call on the department to address this as a matter of urgency. The National Freedom Party supports the report tabled here today.
The Honourable Madisha.
Ndiabulela, Honourable Speaker. The Portfolio Committee's oversight visits to GCIS, the Department of Communications, ICASA, the SABC, as well as other of its reporting entities, reveal in broad terms a common and worrisome thread. That is of ordinary loyal members of staff who are committed and dedicated to achieving the aims, objectives, and programs of their respective entities, being frustrated in operationalizing their programs by their management or lack thereof, and their boards and councils. The Department of Communications, for example, has since 2009, in its political and administrative leadership, been subjected to 6 ministers, 8 acting, and 3 permanent director generals. As Gareth van Onselen of the Institute of Race Relations notes, over a period of 100 months, the department has to date been host to 14 relationships between the respective minister and director general, acting or permanent. Of these 14, 2 have lasted longer than 1 year, 12 have lasted less than 12 months, and 9 only 6 months or less. And that the average amount of time a minister and DG stay together in the department is 7 months only. Speaker, continuing in this observation, COPE notes the concerns expressed by staff of MDDA, which has not had a permanent CEO for the past 2 years. In respect of ICASA, COPE raises its concern at the fear of victimization raised by the staff and the abuse of disciplinary processes to suppress the views of staff. I must there, in terms of MDDA and ICASA, indicate that COPE agrees with the entire portfolio committee since we sat today and looked into this and hope that as a matter of frequency, we shall be able to handle this. COPE knows the dire corporate governance environment at the Films and Publications Board, where both the CEO and COO have been suspended. In respect of the SABC, we note the concerns and fear of victimization raised by the staff and hopes that this situation is on the mend following the appointment of the new board. In conclusion, COPE supports the recommendations of the committee that the minister provide the committee with a detailed report on the concerns raised by members of staff. Thank you very much.
The ANC.
Siabulela, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The ANC supports both reports As some of the members have alluded here, we know what we have seen, especially in KZN around local TV, radio, and community papers. We share the problems which we have addressed them to the then minister and the department itself. But Madam Speaker, these reports, we are presenting them after some developments which have taken place in some of these entities in trying to deal with these problems. Of course, through the urging from the committee itself. We know that the MDDA is a problematic child. As we speak now, we know that there are 4 vacancies there in the board, which needs to be filled urgently. And we know that the SABC have been, after we have appointed a permanent board, which have taken over from the progress made by the interim board, there is some progress there. Although we are keeping our eye, we are hands-on in dealing with the problems of the SABC. We must commend ourselves, this committee, and also Parliament and ANC in particular, by making sure that we restore SABC to be a public broadcaster. We are still far from cleaning all the problems which have been there. We also want to take this opportunity to voice it here that the role which and the mandate of MDDA to try to deal with the problem of the monopoly in ownership of media in South Africa without funding is going to be difficult. We know the problems which are facing this country and the government in as far as resources are concerned. So with that, Madam Speaker, we want to urge this Parliament to assist this committee in making sure that this department begins to play its role and begins to be firm on dealing with all sorts of problems which engulfed these entities. So with those words, as ANC, as I've said, we support both reports. Thank you.
Now, honorable members, due to the position of the EFF, I put the question because they object to the report. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. I think the ayes have it.
Please record the objection of the EFF.
The objections of the EFF shall be recorded, and therefore the reports are adopted and agreed to. The next item on the order paper is a motion the next item is a motion in the name of the Honorable J.S. Malema. I call upon the Honorable Malema.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, EFF leadership, members of the House, fellow South Africans. Almost 400 years ago, a criminal by the name of Jan van Riebeeck landed in our native land and declared an already occupied land by the native population as a no man's land. Van Riebeck, the first descendant of the Dutch to arrive in the Cape, will later lead a full-blown colonial genocide, anti-black land dispossession criminal project, arguing that simply because our people could not produce title deeds, this land that they have been living in for more than 1,000 years was not their own. Essentially, he was disregarding their humanity, treating them as part of the animal world. To him, and many who would have come long after him, the Africans were less than human, not deserving of land ownership. On this basis, the project disempowering Africans of the ability to call this place their land was initiated in blood and in pain. Millions ended up in the humiliated, conquered township condition of being cheap and easily disposable labor. Cecil Rhodes, Paul Kruger, John Smarts, General Herzog, Verwoerd, Botha, even de Klerk, all labored on the Van Riebeck assumption that Africans are less than human. They all, one after another, assaulted the humanity of Africans, keeping them dispossessed of land as cheap and easily disposable labor. Since those painful days when the Khoi of the Cape were defeated and conquered at the establishment of the Cape Colony to the area of the 1,800 with expansion of colonial control into the hinterlands. The days of the Battle of Nome River in 1838 against the Zulu people, the Battle of Mariko River in 1837 against Mzilikazi in north of Transvaal, the attacks of Tababusiu of King Mushweshwe in 1865, the village raids of Bavenda that led to a heroic resistance by King Makado in 1867, the capture and imprisonment of the Khoi chiefs in Robben Island fighting for land in 1870 up to the Land Act of 1913. Colonial crimes against humanity of native population did not end there with the Land Act of 1913. They continued through the forced removals of the Group Areas Act that displaced millions of black people to live in prison camps we now call township. The so-called township is not a settlement of human beings, it's a prison camp. Those who came in power in 1994, carrying the popular mandate of our people to restore the dignity of African child by reinstating land to the dispossessed, forgot their mandate. They became drunk in luxury and glory, building false reconciliation without justice. It took the formation of the EFF 20 years later to revive the question of the dignity of our people in the need for our land. It took the arrival of the EFF in these chambers to return in the central agenda of human freedom the need for the land that was dispossessed through a brutal crimes against humanity. The time for reconciliation is over. Now is the time for justice. If the grandchildren of Jan van Riebeck have not understood that we need our land, that over and above it is about our dignity, then they have failed to receive the gift of humanity. We do not seek revenge, though they caused so much evil in our land. We do not wish for their suffering, though they caused so much humiliation of countless generations. All we want, all our people ever wanted, is their land to which their dignity is rooted and founded. Today, let us close this question once and for all. Let us unite and pay no one for benefiting from the crimes against humanity. Let us come together and agree on this noble, historic, and human call to expropriate land without compensation for equal redistribution. Many want us to debate food security and economic development, but how can we do so when we do not have the land? They want us to come to the table with their bosses and as beggars, because that is unacceptable. The ability to develop policies on food security depend on land redistribution, not the other way around. Those who hold the land labor on the false idea that to distribute it, we must first establish a food security program. No, we must distribute the land. Then we can all talk about food security program. We invite you to engage, not to pick up spears and guns. We invite you to come to the table and realize that nothing means anything for our people except their dignity in the land ownership. For a lasting peace, security, and justice, land must be expropriated without compensation for equal redistribution. We would have failed those who came before us if we were to pay anyone for having committed a genocide. We cannot thank them for having killed innocent people who were fighting to protect their own land. Many people say people who came here, they were running away from their own problems in Europe, and our people welcomed them here in South Africa. It is not true. Why would you engage in a program to kill people who have welcomed you? Those who are saying we must pay for the land are actually arguing us that we must thank those who killed our people, because those who did so, they did so with an intention of wiping out a black generation. We must ensure that we restore the dignity of our people without compensating the criminals who stole our land. Those who continue to protect these crimes are themselves accused of crime, because those who protect crime are criminals themselves. All of us must come together and say, enough is enough. Our people must get the land. We have offered the ANC our 6% to amend the constitution, and that 6% still stands to the African National Congress. We want to say to the ANC, it is now an opportune moment, since you have agreed in your conference to amend the constitution. Anyone who says we can expropriate land without compensation, without amending the constitution, that person is misleading us. Because if that was the case, the ANC would have long expropriated this land without compensation. So we need to amend the constitution, and we must do so unashamedly. It is not unconstitutional to amend the constitution. It is constitutional to amend the constitution. That's why the constitution makes such a provision. We must stop being cowards. We must stop egg walking around the white minorities who are governed by the fear of the unknown when it comes to the question of land expropriation without compensation. The investors of this in this country just want a policy certainty. Once we say we're expropriating without compensation, there is no investor who will leave the country. They will look at our policy and say, how do we continue to make money within the expropriated land? So those who don't agree will continue to ridicule our struggle, because they never suffered the pain of losing land. They don't know how it means to lose land. So we're saying to all political parties, particularly the ones that represent black people, today let it be the day of black unity in honor of Robert Sobukwe.
The Honorable, the Minister of Water and Sanitation. I take this opportunity to congratulate the Minister for his new portfolio.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the ANC unequivocally supports the principle of land expropriation without compensation as moved by the EFF. Honorable Speaker, we may disagree on the modalities, but the principle we agree. There's no question about that. And we are committed to implementing the resolution of the African National Congress, which resonates very well with the motion led by the CIC of the EFF. Honorable Speaker, let's just put context to this. You know, Honorable Speaker, in the 30s already, the first president of the African National Congress, Dr. John Langalibalele Dube, He says the following. He says, there are only 1 million of you, and there are about 6 million of us. And 1 million of you have 3/4 of the land, and 6 million of us, as he put it, have 1/4 of the land. That is not fair. In asking for more land, I do not think we are asking for charity. We have contributed to the development of South Africa with our labor. We have done our share in that respect. And in the matter of taxation, both direct and indirect, close quote. That is Dr. Langalbalele Dube in the 30s already. This is the context of the resolution before us. The resolution of the ANC's 54th National Conference that land should be expropriated without compensation speaks to this historical injustice. And we are committed to correcting it as the African National Congress. Listen to this, because I'm addressing the context of this motion. He vigorously fought off the commissioner's views because he was making this presentation to a commission. He vigorously fought off the commissioner's views that Africans did not know how to use their land properly, that any more would just be wasted, that Africans multiplied too fast, that they had too many cattle. He then says, the black ox has nowhere to feed, and the white ox has all the pastures. I am sorry if I cannot make that clear to you. He is addressing a commission. Now, this is a context, because this context, what I've just read now, is an address by Dr. Langalbalele Dube. Now, the ANC is government now. Now, it is important for us to actually draw this distinction when we talk about modalities, not the principle. Principle is fine. The ANC is government. And as government, the ANC cannot fail the people of South Africa, because it is the people of South Africa who put the ANC where it is today, as government. That is why, during his State of the Nation address, the President of the Republic, President Cyril Ramaphosa, had the following to say in elaborating on this resolution of the ANC. He says, accelerate our land redistribution program, not only to redress a grave historical injustice, but also to bring more producers into the agricultural sector and to make more land available for cultivation. We will pursue a comprehensive approach that makes effective use of all the mechanizations, of all the mechanisms at our disposal. Lastly, he says, guided by the resolution of the 54th National Conference of the governing party, this approach will include expropriation of land without compensation. So there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. Land shall be expropriated without compensation. This will be implemented in a way that increases agricultural production, improves food security, and ensure that land is returned to those from whom it was taken under colonialism and apartheid. There is a narrative which is false, that land was stolen from the indigenous people of this country. That is a false narrative. Nobody was asleep when land was taken. It was taken through brutal wars of colonialism. So let us do away with this narrative that says land was stolen, as if our people were asleep. The first war of dispossession, you may call it a skirmish, took place here in 1659 already. When the Khoi people went to Jan van Riebeeck and these people and said, we have observed now that you are putting up permanent structures here, telling us that you're not intending to leave our country. Jan van Riebeeck's men, he doesn't say in his diary that they actually shot them. You know why they shot them? Because they drove them and they went away. They came back with their own construction, tools, and to put up their own, what you refer to as the first shacks, which therefore demonstrated that the first war of dispossession. They fought with them, they shot them. In 1660, at the conference in the Netherlands, Jan van Riebeeck submits a report that these people came and claimed their land. So it is not correct that it was after 1913. It was long before that. The people went to Jan van Riebeeck's men and said, this is our land. Those are the Khoi and the San. So we, as South Africans, all of us, when we debate the question of land, yes, it is an emotive thing, but we are government now. We are government now. Now, coming back to the land audit, which was referred to in the discussions. We have conducted a land audit, 2017, as the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform. Yes, we'll make it available today. We're busy printing the copies. You'll get the copies. This reflects, just look at this, because we are talking about, we're giving context to the resolution by the CIC of the EFF. That audit report reflects the following ownership pattern across races. That whites own 26.6 million hectares, that is 72% of the total 37 million hectares of farms and agricultural holdings by individual landowners, followed by colored at 15%, Indians at 5%, and Africans a lousy 4%. This is the context of the resolution, rather the draft resolution before us. Now, this land audit which we conducted, there's one interesting thing which we must not lose sight of. There are institutions here, trusts, companies, they own land in this country. Now, these are institutions, that is the next target. And in the land audit, there is a recommendation that we should establish a land administration commission. Already there's a bill before cabinet, Regulation of Agricultural Land Bill. It actually, and one of the conditions there is that a land commission should be established, and everybody who owns land in this country must declare with that. If they don't do so, that will be, and there will be action taken against them in terms of South African law. Because what they're doing, they're hiding the ownership, because trust will not tell us. We've tried our best to know who constitutes this trust. They don't tell us, because trust belongs to justice. Companies belong to DTI. You have community-based organizations. You have got all of these kinds of institutions out there, including churches, by the way. They own land. So, of course, government should own land. Government should own land because government is the government of the people. It's a government which is not the government of the people. We should never own land. Now listen to this, because I know that those of us in this house on the left, the honorable members there, they have got this question that there's communal land out there, etc. It belongs to the chiefs, and wherever you try to do, they say, it's because you're appeasing the chiefs. Listen to this. Listen to this. Listen to this. Listen to this. This is what Dr. Dube says. He says, uppermost in my mind and in the mind of African people was the land issue. They needed far more of it, particularly those who could not afford to buy. The land ought to be purchased for them and handed over. All the African areas ought to be properly surveyed and divided into building plots, grazing grounds, and gardens. People could pay a nominal rent for their plots. Then already, he understood that there were people who could not afford. So a progressive revolutionary government ought to then have land and allocate it to people. Now the reason, let me tell you what. When we started the department in 2009, we don't remember some of them sitting here, we checked how much land have we lost because those programs were giving title deeds to people. Let us be careful here. Let us not be fashionable with capitalists that are sitting on the left thinking that, anything is honky-dory. No. When we did so, we said to them, how much land have we lost since we bought land through LRAD, SPLAG, They said 5% had already been lost to the market. Because people who got land and given title deeds, they then couldn't work the land, they went for loans, and they could not service the loans, and what happened? The same people who owned the land took the land back. We lost 5%. That is why we then said, we're not doing LRAD anymore. We're only going to focus on PLUS, proactive land acquisition strategy. And through that, we kept the land. And we made it available for our people to work it. Because even now, I say, honorable members, even now, if we think we'll just make land available because they say so, and then make land available and give title deeds, be careful. You'll lose that land. When we started the department, 14 farms already were about to be auctioned because our people could not service them. And we put up 87 million rands in 2009 to defend and protect those farms. That's why we stopped the title deeds until our people were in a position and government was in a position to defend them. Now is the time. We are agreed. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Mbabama.
Madam Speaker, in Cry the Beloved Country, Alan Paton reveals the many dimensions of what land means to us as a South African people. He warns us that the ground is holy and that we must keep it, guard it, care for it keeps men, guards men, cares for men. Destroy it and man is destroyed. That last quote, destroy it and man is destroyed, illustrates the inextricable link between man and the land. A man's land, no matter the size, is his refuge, a place where he finds shelter, sustenance, and a sense of well-being. Former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke said, and I quote, "Land is very spiritual. It is in land that we bury our people and connect and speak to our ancestors. It is on land where we build churches, temples, and mosques. And it is from land that we eat and survive," close quote. Seize that land and you take away not only man's livelihood, you take away his identity too. Black people were brutally dispossessed and forcibly removed from their land. Decades later, the wounds still run deep. There is an indisputable need to right that wrong, to make amends. My fellow countrymen, Sizwe Sakuti, expropriation without compensation cannot be part of the solution. Ndicela ukuyiphinda. Compensation, expropriation without compensation cannot be part of the solution. Only a few months ago, members on the right side of the House fully agreed with this position when they opposed the previous EFF motion to expropriate without compensation. Today, they have backtracked. What has changed? Expropriation without compensation fundamentally undermines property ownership in South Africa. The property clause in section 25 of the Constitution states that property is not limited to land. This poses serious risks to investment in agriculture and South Africa in general if expropriation without compensation is implemented. Kes Kuvadia, MD of the Banking Association of South Africa, writes that expropriation without compensation erodes property rights, and once this happens, land can no longer serve as collateral. Most productive agricultural land is bonded to financial institutions under a total debt of approximately 160 billion rands. What will happen to that debt should the encumbered farms be expropriated without compensation? Kristen and Sihlalo, two agricultural economists, raise a valid query. They argue that in a typical productive farming operation, considering both movable and immovable assets, the land is roughly 10% of the value of the operation. Under expropriation without compensation, the infrastructure and assets, would they also be seized? The problem is not section 25 of the Constitution. Expropriation without compensation is a way to divert attention away from the failures of the ANC government. As former President Kgalema Motlaten's high-level report points out, the need to pay compensation has not been the most serious constraint on land reform in South Africa, and Mr. Nkwinti knows this. The aims of land reform and do so in a way that truly empowers Black people and strengthens the economy. One of the ways in which this can be achieved is through partnerships with community organizations, an initiative that has enabled the DA to accelerate the pace of land reform here in the Western Cape. This approach has led to the success of 62% of all land reform farms in the Western Cape. This is in stark contrast to the 90% failure rate of land reform programs in the rest of the country. Mamelani nifunde. Our approach means we have more Black farmers participating in the formal economy, with the state playing a role in providing the support they need. Another method of ensuring that land reform serves as a tool of economic freedom is to give title deeds to farmers. Most people do not know that it is national government policy to withhold title deeds from Black farmers. This is a barrier to land reform. Here in the Western Cape, the DA has delivered 82,830 title deeds since 2009. This not only provides Black farmers with the dignity of owning their own property, but it also provides access to funds through financial institutions. Surely this is true economic freedom. Bantu bakuthi umbutho we-DA uyavumelana ne-land reform nokubuyiselwa komhlaba ebantwini. Kunyanzelekile uba abantu abamnyama abangathathi intweni babandakanyeke kwezomhlaba ukuze bakwazi ukuxhamla kwezoqoqosho. Kodwa asivumelani nokuxuthwa komhlaba ngaphandle kwembuyekezo. I-DA izawunifundisa.
Ilunga elihloniphekileyo, uCebekhulu.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, land which has often been referred to as Africa's most valued asset is no doubt a critical resource for all aspects of our lives and further development. Inherent and foundation to the successful future sustainable development of our land is the notion of appropriately developed, just and equitable land, tenure laws, and administrative reform. Inherent in our Constitution is the right to property, and our supreme law is explicit when it states that no one may be deprived of land except in terms of the law of the general application. and conditional upon such deprivation being for a public purpose or in the public interest, and further, subject to the agreed by those affected or the court decided and approve compensation. Constitutional Review Committee is a suitable structure to look into this matter rather than ad hoc committee as proposed in this motion. The notion of expropriation without compensation, which would first require a constitutional amendment, would be supported by the IFP only in very limited circumstances, it being the exception rather than norm. Honorable Deputy Speaker, there are vast tracts of state-owned land in our country. This land is by and large vacant and unproductive. Why has the state not already allocated such land to our previously disenfranchised landless citizenry? Additionally, there are large portions of privately owned, unused and vacant land whose owners cannot be traced or located. Portions of such unused land could be redistributed to our landless citizenry. This could be one of exceptional circumstances as spoken of before. In respect of land held in communal trust by traditional leaders for the benefit of the communities, we would strongly advise against government identifying such land and being potentially redistributable, as such land has already been redistributed to the people. This land is productive, and our communities are occupying and using the fruits of such land into perpetuity under the able leadership and trust of traditional leaders. Any attempt by government to change such status quo would be met with fierce opposition from the citizenry and would be a recipe for a disaster. In respect of such land communally held in trust by traditional leaders, government should rather be focusing on assisting communities with more effective land use and management strategies. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Sheikh.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy Speaker, let me start off by maybe agreeing with Honorable Babama. Honorable Malema, when she says that there should be no compensation, expropriation without compensation, maybe she's correct. Because these people that stole the land from the Khoi and the San in District 6 and everywhere, they all became millionaires at the expense of the blood, sweat and tears of these people. So in any event, there should be no compensation whatsoever. So we must expropriate. The ANC, the National Freedom Party, the EFF and the IFP are all in agreement we must expropriate. So what is the delay? There's no need for a debate. Let's go forward. Let's go out there and expropriate. Time is running out. Time is running out. Let's go out there and give to our people what is rightfully theirs. Now, you know, Honorable Deputy Speaker, I'm not surprised about my colleagues on the left here, because in a very short space of time from being oppressed, they became oppressors, because the grass is greener on this side with all the evergreen contracts in any event. Now, what do? Not only oppress and took away the land of our people here, they even support Israel in who have now stolen the land of the people of Palestine. So they don't only interfere here, they interfere everywhere else as well. Now, Honorable Deputy Speaker, let me also add, very many times we've put in mechanisms to deal with this issue. And this is going on for 24 years. What does the Criminal Procedure Act say, Honorable Malema? What does it say? That if you buy stolen goods, you are as good as a thief. If you are occupying land that you knew that even if you bought, that was land that was stolen by your people, then you are occupying stolen land, so you are a criminal. So you should be charged equally as well. So why is it okay for you to occupy stolen land and be in possession and not be charged, but if you buy stolen goods on this side, then you must be charged? Why is there two different laws and two different rules for these people? Honorable Deputy Speaker, let me also add, there's a serious problem, not only with the Khoi and the San and District 6 and the Ndebele people. All the land on the N1, right up to Sea Point and all over. What is happening? This colonialists, these apartheid oppressors are working with the rich and the elite, and all that land are giving to just a handful of people to develop. Those properties are out of reach of not only the average person, even the middle class cannot afford it anymore, because that is exactly what they are doing. So, Honorable Minister and Deputy Speaker, the time has come to deal with this matter and deal with it appropriately and deal with it today. Time is running out. What we as the NFP want to know, when will you start redistributing the first land to the rightful owners? Give us the date, give us the time, and we will be there. We fully support this. Thank you very much.
Honorable Sultan.
And now from a different angle. In November 1990, 80 church denominations met at the National Conference of Church Leaders in South Africa and produced the well-known Rustenburg Declaration. The central theme of the conference was the expression of the contrition for the wrongs and sins of the past and a call for action to repair those wrongs. In paragraph 2.4 of the declaration, the Church Leaders Conference said, quote, "We know that without genuine repentance and practical restitution, we cannot appropriate God's forgiveness, and that without justice, true reconciliation is impossible." The conference went further to say, as a first step towards restitution, we call on government to return all land expropriated to its original owners, unquote. The call by the church leaders would respond to what today seems to be the glaringly missing issue in the debate about land. Notwithstanding the provisions of the Constitution, the question of moral demand or rightness of not only changing land access and relationships, but of repairing the hurt, the misery, the brokenness and trauma of a person violently ripped off from their land for generations. 2013 marked the centenary of the 1913 Land Act, the Native Land Act, which heralded an extraordinary scale of land dispossession. Many South Africans, including members of this House, made moving observations and experiences about the viciousness of that act and its subsequent impact on land ownership in South Africa. However, any talk on land has still not translated into a legislative and policy landscape that recognizes the question of land reform as a matter of inclusive economic development, moral concern, and legal justice. The UDM supports the wide and inclusive consultative process in this matter of national interest. We want to remind citizens that the most lucrative and substantial amount of land was taken before the 19th of June, 1913. The failure of the restitution program, as found in the report by the High Panel, represents justice denied. The principle of justice, it would be understood by the Conference of Church Leaders, demands that where something was unjustly acquired or taken away, it must be returned or given back. In simple language, if you steal my vehicle, I lay claim to it. I deserve it back. I'm not required to pay it back. In fact, what may invite unending conflict is not the return of land to its rightful owners, but the refusal to do so. Return the land to the rightful owners. Given the historical reality of our country, the current economic challenges confronting the nation, the increasing levels of inequality and poverty, the UDM supports the motion.
Agbare adjunct speaker, it is quite clear the Honourable Imam did not put on his red overall. But what I want to say, that I thoroughly agree with the Honourable Nkwinti when he said, and to use his words, that the narrative that the land was stolen must stop because it's false. I agree. If we want to debate on a responsible manner about land, we will have to stop that. And there are many interpretations when it comes to history. But I want to quote the Honorable Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi when he spoke at the inauguration of the Nkome Blood River Monument on 16 December 1998. And I quote, "In 1991, even before apologies became the fashion of the day, on behalf of the Zulu nation, I tendered my apologies to the Afrikaner nation for what became the fate of Piet Retief and his voortrekkers and the action taken by my ancestors' side, which caused pain and suffering to their people. I have reiterated this apology on several occasions, including 2 weeks ago when I received the freedom of the city of Utrecht." Close quote. Honorable Buthelezi, the Afrikaner accepted the apology. And it is time that the young people in South Africa must learn history by an elder statesman with high integrity. Die vraag, agbare adjunct speaker, is, as die regering dan die grond wil onteien sonder vergoeding, wat wil u daarmee doen? Dis die vraag. Wat gaan u daarmee maak? Ons weet van wie se grond ons praat. Almal sê dit is die wit mense wat moet die grond teruggee. Ons moet ook baie duidelik kyk na hierdie voorstel en ook wat die ANC regering gesê het. En ek wil vandag weer vir alle grondeienaars sê, moet u nie laat mislei om te dink hier word net gepraat van landbougrond nie. Hier word gepraat van alle grond. So as jy die eienaar is van 'n woonhuis in 'n dorp of 'n stad, sluit dit in. Maar ek vra weer die vraag, vir wat wil u die grond gebruik? Want as u dit wil gebruik om mee te boer, om die landbou te stimuleer, dan sê ek vir u as minister is die mislukking van grondhervorming in Suid-Afrika. Dit is hoekom ons is waar ons is. Die Vryheidsfront Plus sal dit nie ondersteun nie. And I want to say again, if you continue on this course,
Remember, your term is expired.
I can assure you there are going to be unforeseen consequences,
Lekota.
not in the interest of South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Deputy Speaker. Last week in the debate in the House, Honorable Ndlozi asked me a question. Why did you go to Robben Island? Or what were you doing on Robben Island? Well, I went to Robben Island because I was fighting against white domination over us, the black sections of the population. En route to Robben Island, I chanced upon a prisoner who came from the Free State like myself. His name was Bram Fischer. He was doing life imprisonment, opposed to white domination over blacks, just like myself. Indeed, he was a colleague and a close comrade of President Mandela and others who were already doing lifetime on Robben Island. Later on, when I was in Robben Island, I learned from the senior leaders there, including Walter Sisulu and others, that Bram Fischer was their comrade, that like themselves was fighting against white domination over blacks. But they also imparted something to me, which I have kept remembering, especially in the recent period, that those of us who yesterday were harassed by our white counterparts now confront a challenge I think some of us are ashamed to accept. The danger that there are those who think that equality in our time means that we must dominate whites. I'm serious because I asked the question last week. Please listen. I asked the question last week. Who is these people? Who is these people who are our people and who's not our people? In 1955, Chief Albert Luthuli, Z.K. Matthews, many of the leaders of our people, Dr. Dadu, Dr. Naika, and many others went to Kliptown and they said, the South Africa of the future is one that will belong to all of us, black and white. We were not there, but that is the legacy that they handed over to us, that the South Africa we now are struggling for. And that Congress had the Indian Congress, the Colored Congress, the African
Lekota,
Congress, and so
your
on.
time has expired, sir.
No, the thing is now to seek
Honorable
to divide
Lekota, look at your
the
watch,
people on
sir.
the basis of some pronouncements of before 55. When you adopted this thing that the land will be given to some and taken from others, you now set us on the course
Honorable
of the
Lekota, I'm
PAC of
switching off your
1959.
microphone.
This is the PAC of 59, this.
Honorable Deputy
no longer
Minister
the
of
African
Rural
National
Development and Land Reform.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Deputy President, congratulations, by the way, I don't see him. We reaffirm the position of the 54th National Conference of the ANC of the expropriation of land without compensation. During his State of the Nation address, the President of the Republic had the following to say in elaborating on this resolution. We want to accelerate our land redistribution program, not only to redress a grave historical injustice, but also to bring more producers into the agricultural sector and to make more land available for cultivation. We will pursue a comprehensive approach that makes effective use of all the mechanisms at our disposal. Guided by the resolutions of the National Conference, this approach will include expropriation of land without compensation. This will be implemented in a way that increases agricultural production, improves food security, and ensures that land is returned from those to those from whom it was taken under colonialism and apartheid. The pinnacle of our work is guided by the Freedom Charter. And the preamble says South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white, and that no government can justly claim authority over South Africa unless that government is based on the will of the people. It also has two important clauses. The land shall be shared among those who work it. The people shall share in the country's wealth. The ANC is committed to building a more equal society in which all can find decent work and enjoy sustainable livelihood. Three areas of land reform are namely land restitution, land redistribution, and land tenure. The land audit that the minister has referred to indicates that we are far from achieving what equality in this country. I just want to say that let us not be misunderstood. We reiterate that the principle is something that we 100% agree, and we are not going to be turning back. Now, you should not make a mistake when we want equality and say we want to oppress whites. Honorable Lekota is making a big mistake. We are saying we want to redress a historical injustice, barbaric brutality. We at this time, in fact, every speaker here that came to the fore, starting from Honorable Malema, he says we are not carrying guns or spears, but we want what belongs to us. And on that, we should be unshaken. In answering the Honorable Lekota's question about who are these people, the indigenous people are those that were colonized here, Honorable Lekota. No other people. And I really want to lastly say, Honorable Mpapama, I enjoy the fact that you say what you are saying in vernacular too. Abantu bakuthi bakumamele. Uthi mabawungawunikwa umhlaba wabo. Now, if I may answer, if you say that why we were not saying this and we are now saying this, that's why we are a democratic organization. When the ANC was formed in 1912, we never said we wanted to take up arms. But at a particular juncture in our history, we felt that it was now critical for us to take up arms against an injustice regime. We are pursuing, it's a democratic organization that has now decided that we must do everything in our power to make sure that land is expropriated in our country. And in doing so, we want African people to understand us, we want white people to understand us, Indians and coloreds. We are a responsible government. We want to take everybody along in achieving an equitable society. And the only thing that you can do is to walk the road with us. There was a cry when we started introducing 50-50. Today, there are white farmers who are supporting that project because you also are immediate beneficiaries in an equal society. Let us walk this road all together. And I can assure you, Honorable
Honorable
Mpapama,
Deputy Minister.
we are going to be patient with you. We'll
your
take
time
you
is
with
expired.
us. Ungomnye wethu, usalahlekile.
Honorable Misha.
Deputy Speaker, the ACDP has always acknowledged that there has been a historical socio-economic injustice in South Africa around the question of land ownership, and our black population has been at the receiving end of forced dispossession. That is why the ACDP supports fair, legal, just reform and land redistribution. This past weekend, the ACDP had a guest speaker, Dr. Tunde Bakari, the future president of Nigeria, who gave us his insight into the subject of expropriation of land without compensation. Among other things, he said, for socio-economic justice to be done, land redistribution is inevitable. However, the Zimbabwean model is equally unjust, socially hazardous, and economically unviable, even if politically appealing in the short term. He continued to say, and I quote, expropriation of land without compensation is an aberration under international law. The property, even of an alien, cannot be taken for public use without adequate compensation. This is in line with natural justice and takes into consideration the fact that the current owners have added value to the land in the form of investments. Resolving this matter requires inclusive policies such as those that helped create a post-apartheid South African nation under the leadership of President Nelson Mandela. Hence, nationhood must be the overriding objective. The state must champion a pragmatic land redistribution drive guided by the principles of equity and justice, close quote. The ACDP will therefore not support this motion before us because we believe expropriation of land without compensation is another forced takeover of land which involves paying evil with evil. Honorable members, two wrongs do not make a right. The fact that the apartheid government forcefully dispossessed black people of their land does not justify the democratic government repeating the same evil. Expropriation of land without compensation has historically destabilized economies as it destroys investor confidence and scares foreign investors. The ACDP will not place ownership of land in the hands of the state, which would then lease it to its citizens. True economic freedom is guaranteed more by innovation, industry, and productivity rather than by radicalism and rebellion. The ACDP, therefore, calls on all parties in this House to help build one nation under the Almighty God, who desires that the benefits and profit of the land be for all its people, regardless of their color, gender, or creed. I thank you.
Honorable Gallo.
Deputy Speaker, this debate is stubbornly recalcitrant. It is the complete cleansing of the land enigma that will rid South Africa of the many challenges associated with the land question. It must be said that until we answer the following questions, no meaningful constitutional amendments will save the day. These questions are: has the current government been able to dismantle the spatial patterns of apartheid? Has land development achieved rural and urban justice and equity? Have we aggressively empowered women and their immediate families against illegal evictions? In other words, have we secured land tenure of our people against illegal deprivation and eviction? The process of reconfiguring the scheme of land rights in South Africa has succeeded in legislation. It has stalled, however, in the implementation. The government has introduced the following legislations, amongst others: to supposedly address the land question, the Labour Tenants Act 3 of 1996 and the Extension of Security of Tenure Act 6.2 of 1997. Under the currency of these laws, rural hunger has amplified illegal evictions in commercial farms and have skyrocketed. Shack settlements and shanty towns have increased. The spatial planning introduced by apartheid has not been dismantled. The land restitution measures have not brought about subsistence food security. The motion, Honorable Deputy Speaker, envisages that Parliament has to pass a bill to give effect to the expropriation of land without compensation. It is completely ironic, honorable members, that it is this Parliament that the EFF wishes to debate and pass the expropriation bill when it rejected its legitimacy when the President of the country was sworn in. We, however, support this motion in principle. Our long-standing view on this matter is that the inefficiencies in state machinery and administration to drive the land reform project has largely given rise to this quagmire. We therefore propose the following measures to address the land reform question. A national land reform panel to establish practical measures to achieve land reform.
Honorable Tlowama, my apologies, sir. Your time has expired badly.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members. Honorable Reverend Mishwe, please agree with me when I say those who have taken our land by force, Jesus Christ must reject their prayers. Honorable members, Mr. Groeneveld's speech is like the longest suicide note in history. This democratic project cannot survive if those benefited unlawfully do not unconditionally volunteer to equally distribute the land to the previously marginalized. Honorable members, Arang SA supports this motion without reservation. We shall not fear those who are still nostalgic to the era of Verwoerd. Those remnants of the Broederbond will never give land for free. We must amend Section 25 and speed this process to avoid land grabs or anarchy. I urge the ruling party to develop a backbone of steel and stop speaking with folk tongues. The issue of land has been with the ruling party since the dawn of democracy. However, they have done nothing so far. Honorable members, Honorable Minister Nkwinti is well known. He has mastered the art of pacification, or should I say, seducing us to believe that the ANC is serious. The ANC will agree to anything just to win elections. We need to put time frame, otherwise we'll debate this matter after a few years again. Honorable members, we need to look those fellow South Africans in their eyes and ask them, how do they sleep at night when they have title deeds, which includes mountains and rivers, while our people do not even a place to call, a piece of land to call theirs. We need to do this as a matter of agency to restore their cultural and spiritual and physical dignity. If we fail to do that, then this democratic dispensation is of no benefit to our people. Then it is a celebrated fake. I thank you.
Is the PAC not here? Okay. Honorable Godi, APC.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker, comrades, and honorable members. Today marks exactly 40 years since the passing away of our great leader, Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. It is a fitting tribute to Sobukwe and all Africanists that we are reaching sufficient national consensus on the need to return the land to its indigenous African owners. Sobukwe stood for African national self-determination, and there can be no resolution of the national question without Africans gaining effective and total ownership of their inalienable inheritance, their forebearers' land. Let's not forget history of conquest, of land dispossession through wars of colonial conquest by white people, through forced removals, through the slave labor in the farms, prisoners sold to the farms. Let's not forget the infamous potato farms in Bethal, Mpumalanga, the continued attacks, dispossession of livestock and murder in the farms in Piet Retief, Wakkerstroom, Pongola, and elsewhere. And today, the descendants of those brutal land dispossessors sit here in suits and ties and want to pontificate to us. What nerve, what arrogance. To them we say as the APC, go away, angels of darkness, flee to the far corners of nothingness. You will never fool us. If you deny the historical injustice of brutal, heartless land dispossession, nothing else you say matters to me anymore. The APC wants to salute the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania for having endured ridicule, insult, and isolation because of its stand on the land question. In the 1994 elections, the PAC slogan was, "Land first and all shall follow." We were ignored. The PAC manifesto also said there shall be land expropriation without compensation, except compensation for improvements made on the farm, not for the land itself. Well, 2 decades later, we seem to be making progress. Now, let us chant with the revolutionary Nigerian musician Sonny Okusan when he sings and says, "Give us the land, my papa's land, give us the land." Who owns papa's land? We want to know who owns the land. Freedom fighters want to know who owns the land. Soweto wants to know who owns the land. Angola, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Namibia want to know who owns the land. Give us the land, my papa's land. Give us the land. Isolate.
Honorable Robertson.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. What is this obsession with private land? What is this obsession with private land? The ANC inherited land that the apartheid government stole, and they still have not given it open to the very people that deserve the land. Why don't you show us the route? Show us the route. Expropriate your own land and give it to the people. Expropriate the state's land and give it to the people. Ngeke suka ni. Abantu bayahlupheka. Abantu bayahlupheka. Nkosi yami. The ANC government do not have a land problem. We have a problem with the way the ANC are handling land. People were dispossessed of their land and their dignity by the discriminatory laws of the past. A painful past that can never be forgotten. But the ANC's call for expropriation is just a lazy attempt to divert attention away from the real reasons that lie at the heart of the slow pace of meaningful land reform and restitution. In March 2017, the EFF brought a similar motion to the House, and the ANC shot it down in flames. The ANC speakers unanimously condemned the suggestion to expropriate without compensation. They used language such as, "We totally reject amending Section 25 of the Constitution," saying that the ANC don't need the EFF's 6%. They will do exactly what they want to. The ANC rejects the EFF's calls for land invasion. They themselves have said that all the right mechanisms are in place to ensure that land reform happens. So what has changed? South Africa's Constitution recognizes the painful historic injustices. The Bill of Rights seeks to ensure that the rights of all citizens are protected. Section 25 protects the rights of property ownership, but recognizes the use of different mechanisms, including expropriation, to ensure that the transfer of land occurs, but this is done in a just and equitable way. As the high-level panel report indicates, government has to focus on releasing state and SOE-owned land and to leverage as much of its tangible assets to accommodate the ever-increasing demand for land, financial and economic inclusion. According to the latest land audit, the state still owns approximately 17 million hectares, Honourable Minister, 17 million hectares. This is why I ask about the obsession with private land. Releasing most of its poor assets, I beg your pardon. According to the latest land audit, the state still owns 17 million hectares of property. Thus, by releasing most of those assets through a fair and efficient process, could propel the transfer of land to black ownership from 8.1 million hectares to more than double that figure in a fraction of the time that it would take to expropriate. And this would be done without harming the economy. So why expropriate without compensation and not just release state-owned property? And while doing so, continue to uphold Section 25 of the Constitution. It is surely the logical place to start. We do not have to change the Constitution. We need to implement it, and we need to find efficient solutions. In his budget speech, Minister Gagaba mentioned, ex-Minister Gagaba mentioned that 2,851 land claims will be settled in the MTEF, which will cost the taxpayer approximately 10.8 billion rand and only equates to 291,000 hectares of property. But currently, a written question to the Department of Public Works reveals that the department sits on 1.9 million hectares of surplus land lying idle, which consists of 12,000 properties throughout the country. The problem is that the inefficient state does not do enough about transferring state-owned land back to the people. The Adriansa family were awarded a land claim for 96 hectares owned by the state or owned by the Department of Public Works next to the Cape Town International Airport. In 2016, the state, through the National Department of Public Works, indicated that they lacked the resources to finalize this claim. I remind you, 1.9 million hectares of land lying idly and owned by Public Works, yet they can't assist our people. Over 4,000 farm ownerships are yet to receive the title transferred to beneficiaries. There is a clear reluctance by the state to hand over land. The devastating failure rate of 90% of our land reform projects throughout South Africa is another reason why the constitutional changes cannot serve South Africa's best interests. In comparison, the DA-run Western Cape far exceeds the rest of the country in terms of land reform successes, and we show a remarkable success rate of 62%. Isn't that wonderful?
Honourable Member.
Thank you very much.
Expired.
We reject this motion of expropriation without compensation. Thank you.
Honourable P.J. Mbuni.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, members of the Executive, honourable members of the House, our guests. Thank you to the EFF for reintroducing this motion once more. It was introduced at some stage. We debated immensely, but a major event of a big and governing party took place and discussed in line with the history of the ANC and the policy, and actually resolved that the notion of land expropriation without compensation is part of the toolkit of the ANC in seeking to redress the troubled land question. We have said before, and it has been said so many times since the advent of democracy, that indeed the land was not stolen. I see Honorable Akhbare saying the land was not stolen. I don't think you mean the same thing as Minister Ngwindi was meaning. The land was not stolen, but the land was taken away, was dispossessed through brutal wars. Blood was spilled, people were imprisoned. I may seek to check the notes with the EFF speaker in terms of who actually were the 7 Robben Island prisoners. On our record, I'm no historian, but through general knowledge, I do know that Chief Makoma, Chief Sandile, Chief Kyali, Chief Siolo, Chief Outer, Chief Langalibalele, Chief Fadane were all the chiefs of the African people who were imprisoned on Robben Island. Yes, indeed, we confirm that that was following also on the leaders of the Khoisan people who were there in prison, including one heroic Croiter who was able to escape from the Robben Island right there in the sea and escaped that incarceration. We would have loved to speak more politics had time allowed, but in passing, we just need to affirm one thing. Colonialism, Honorable Mbabama, Honorable Robertson, sought to further the imperialist agenda, nothing else, full stop. What imperialism is for you to go and find out. We can assist, I can assist. Colonialism had no other objective. Please also share with Honorable Helen Zille. We don't seem to welcome that colonialism had come here to bring us development. All societies develop. There's no stagnant society anywhere. Colonialism was brought about by imperialists in order to suck and super exploit the peoples of the continent of Africa, in fact, including Latin America and other places the world over that were colonized. There were wars of dispossession, so Akhbare, please bear with us. You seem to think that land was not stolen, so it was amicably given. There were wars of dispossession. We would invite you, I come from the Eastern Cape, to go and tell us, where do these forts come from that you find so many of in the Eastern Cape? And as a general, you would know where the word fort emerges from. Fort Hare, Fort Beaufort, Fort Malan, Fort Jackson, and all the forts that you find throughout this country. I'm just giving you one scenario in one province. So there were wars fought. It is these wars of dispossession that ultimately led to the ANC being formed in 1912 and people coming together. I don't have time to, again, take you through what led to Mxhosa, Msuthu, Mzulu, Ndebele, whoever, Manyanani, because it was clear that the offensive was just too hard for our people to can bear as different peoples and different tribes. We did say before, and we repeat also just to make sure that we're at one with our colleagues who moved this motion, that it led to apartheid, the Union of South Africa in 1910 and the 1913 Land Act. In fact, the judgment of the 28th of July 2016 by Judge Madlanga and the full bench of the Concord is very, very instructive. Judge Madlanga, with the concurrence of the rest of the judges, says, to those who personally experienced the forced removals and those who, instead of inheriting the illegitimately wrestled land, inherited the pain of loss of homes or property, the dispossessions are not merely colonial or apartheid era memories. They continue to be post-apartheid realities. And then skipping a little bit, he says somewhere, the continuing post-apartheid realities of land dispossession are more so in the case of those who are yet to enjoy the fruits of restitution or equitable redress in terms of the Restitution Act. In short, the land portfolio is composed of 3 legs, was nicely captured by the Minister and Deputy Minister Skwacha, that when you talk land reform, you're really referring to land tenure, land restitution, and land redistribution. It's my pleasure, honor, and privilege to have introduced to this august house the reopening of restitution, by which we seek to further advance the agenda of making sure that the land is redistributed to our people. It is also our pleasure to say the extension of security amendment bill is now at the NCOP, where it is being finalized before acceded to and signed by the President, tell him, fresh from the box, President Ramaphosa, before he accents to the ESTA. Those of us who were involved in the process, we are convinced that ESTA as amended will make it almost impossible to evict people on the farms. We have become acutely aware of 2.8 million people dwelling on the farms who are super exploited with mud huts and so forth. I do not know if you differ with the facts we are raising, honorable colleagues on this side. We want to suggest, however, that as we cautiously, like our honorable minister and deputy, have indicated that now the crux of expropriation without compensation is our policy as the ANC. We want, however, to even advise our peoples in communities and everywhere that by adopting this policy, we are not saying people must smash and grab, each one for himself and the devil takes the hindmost. That's not what we are saying. We are saying a scientific systemic tool must be developed to ensure that the redress insofar as the land question, the redistribution is fast-tracked through a scientific means, through constitutional means, through legislated means. To this effect, we're raising 2 pieces of legislation. One that had been to the presidency before and came back for minor ratification is the Expropriation Act led by Public Works, which we inform our people, we inform this august house, that again it's at NCOP, from where it will then be adopted to be law, right? Time permitting, I just want to go to the Constitution's clause 25 because it looks like a swear clause, but indicate that in our understanding, it opens up avenues insofar as I'll read verbatim the provisions there. No one, 25(1), quote, no one may be deprived of property except in terms of law of general application, and no law may permit arbitrary deprivation of property. Now, no one may be deprived except in terms of law of general application. This is what we are saying is now at NCOP. Once that law is passed and acceded to, then we will have an expropriation tool insofar as we read section 25. Retired Judge Moseneke did allude to the section 25 to have never been tested And we think that that Expropriation Act is gonna help a great deal to make sure that we test Section 25. Yes, of course, if needs be, we will definitely gladly see if Section 25 is a fetter and be able to say what amendments to effect there, right? Section 25 goes further to say property may be expropriated only in terms of law of general application for a public purpose or public interest. So there we read an affirmation that it is enabling, right? For purpose of this section, the public interest includes nations' commitment to land reform and to bring about equitable access to all South Africa's natural resources. We think they are still in line with the Freedom Charter. And the whole of Section 25, in fact, as may be read. But to our colleagues, indeed, in the EFF who moved the motion, indeed, let us sit down and see what do we see as a fetter, how do we move forward. Our people cannot continue to stay in slums, in squatter areas, and everywhere called Boberge and called whatever they are called. So indeed, we see the need to fast track. Safe to say that for us, in summary, the law of general application. Again, we think that having moved from willing buyer, willing seller, having moved to just and equitable compensation, we think that let us now test the waters in terms of expropriation without compensation. Yes, we are in agreement. Let us just test if we mean the same thing in content. In short, Honorable Deputy Speaker, as the ANC, we have no fundamental objections, save for consultations we're doing with all the parties here to see if we cannot concur on the motion that we're debating, that it be amended, and therefore we pass it, all of us. Thank you.
Honorable Malema.
Thank you very much. I think that South Africans will begin to appreciate that a party of 6% is doing what a party of 60% couldn't do for many years. And imagine if this party had the same percentage, what would have delivered? In our discussion after the 2016 elections, we gave the ANC certain conditions. And one of those conditions was that Zuma must go, the stem must fall, one capital city, Gupta Commission, and free education. And the ANC seems to be meeting all of the conditions we have given them during those negotiations. We gave the same conditions to the DA, and the DA seems not to be meeting any of the conditions we have given them on why they should run the metros. And they are forever drifting away from the EFF. So we will have to find a way of really dealing with the situation in the metros. Comrade Terra, when you went to prison, Robben Island, you were a black consciousness. And when you came back, you became a historical mistake, which came out of Robben Island. It is extremely disappointing every time you open your mouth to speak here, that which you thought you represent, you have abandoned. You can't ask the question, who are your people? Because the National Democratic Revolution answers that question. It says the motive forces that stands to benefit from the victories of this revolution, those are our people. Who are the motive forces of the National Democratic Revolution which you went to prison for? The motive forces of the National Democratic Revolution are the oppressed. Who are the oppressed? The blacks in general and Africans in particular. But consciousness, when it escapes you, it doesn't say goodbye. You are such a typical example of a person who has just lost his political consciousness. Because these teachings they should have taught you in Robben Island. But clearly, that university of life has dismally failed when it came to you. So it is actually extremely wrong of you to stand here and want to distort a history. All we are saying is that, as the EFF, let us subject the whole thing to consultation. We don't have a problem. We cannot come and meet here as a group of elite and take a decision on behalf of our people. Let it be referred to committees. Let our people be consulted. Let ordinary South Africans make input. We are not opposed to that. As long as this parliament agrees that indeed we are at one, but let us go and take a further mandate from our people. So we are happy as the EFF with the types of amendment the ANC want to make. This is not about party politics. This is about an issue of national interest. So on the 6th of April, as I conclude, the day of the Jan van Riebeeck arrival, 6th of April, the day of Jan van Riebeeck arrival, the day of the formation of the PAC by Sobukwe, and the hanging of Solomon Mahlangu, in honor of these people, but also as a demonstration of seriousness about this issue of land, we will be passing a motion of no confidence on the mayor of PE as a warning shot to the DA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honorable members. Thank you. Honorable members, order. Order, honorable members. That concludes the debate on this motion. I now put the motion. Are there any objections? The ANC?
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. The ANC would like to make the following amendments to the EFF's motion. That paragraph 6 of the motion be amended as follows. Recognizes that the current policy...
Honorable Chairperson. Will you take your seat, Honorable Deputy Chief Whip of the ANC? Yes, Honorable Member.
On a point of order.
Yes, Honorable Member.
Chairperson, in terms of the process, you have just ruled that the debate has been completed. That was the ruling. The debate has been completed. I'm not convinced that the motion to amend can now be moved at this stage before we vote. The amendment should have been moved during the debate.
No, Honorable Shavambu.
They did. I was chair. We came from a consultation now as the whips of different political parties. The correct procedure is that immediately after debate, you can put the nay or yea option, which we did. And any party has got a right to put an amendment proposal. And if it's different parties that put amendment proposals, the last amendment proposal to be put into the House is the one that we vote on, and we roll backward like that. The first one will be the one which we last vote on, and then we integrate it, and then we then decide on a motion in terms of what happens moving forward. I don't know what constitutes the opportunism of Freedom Front.
Thank you, Honorable Shavambu. No, honorable members, what we are doing now is to implement the rule, and the rule simply states that any member may propose an amendment, and in fact the table have received a detailed amendment from the ANC, and we were alerted to the fact that such an amendment will be moved. There's been consultation with the original movers of the motion as it stands. There is agreement, and that is why I am inclined to allow the Honorable Deputy Chief Whip to continue.
Chairperson, may I address you?
Yes.
I hear what you are saying. I want clarity for future's sake. If the chairperson has ruled that the debate has been concluded, I would like to know, in terms of the rules, what gives us the right then to come with amendments after the debate has been concluded. If there's such a rule, please enlighten me. I'll accept that.
No, honorable members. Yeah, no, the question was put. That's correct, and that's why we're proceeding. Honorable members, the question was put, and there was an indication that there's objections, and then there was an indication in terms of the rules, Rule 1212, that there's an amendment, and as I say, we were furnished with a copy of the amendment that was also made available to the original movers of the motion. Deputy Chief Whip, will you proceed, please?
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. The ANC would like to move to amend the EFF's motion as follows. That paragraph 6 of the motion be amended as follows. Recognizes that the current policy instruments, including the willing buyer, willing seller policy, and other provisions of Section 25 of the Constitution may be hindering effective land reform. Number 2, delete paragraph 7 of the motion as printed on the order paper. 3, substitute paragraph 8 of the motion with the following. Notes that in his State of the Nation address, President Cyril Ramaphosa, in recognizing the original sin of the land dispossession, made a commitment that government will continue the land reform program that entails expropriation of land without compensation, making use of all mechanisms at the disposal of the state, implemented in a manner that increases agricultural production, improves food security, and ensures that the land is returned to those from whom it was taken under colonialism and apartheid, and undertake a process of consultation to determine the modalities of the governing party resolution, our conference resolution that was in December. Amend paragraph 10 as follows. With the concurrence of the NCOP, instructs the Constitutional Review Committee to A, review Section 25 of the Constitution and other clauses where necessary. B, after the word amendments, to insert where applicable and delete all the words after needed. C, delete subparagraph C and D. Then D, amend the date for reporting to the Assembly to the 30th of August 2018. Honorable House Chairperson, I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chief Whip. Are there any other amendments? Are there any other amendments? There being no further amendments, I thus want to put this amendment to the House. Are there any objections?
Honourable Chairperson.
Yes, Honourable Member.
I just rise in response to the amendments that were proposed, and I'm sure you would realize that there were substantive amendments, not necessarily on the principle, but in the number of words. And I think it's only fair if we are given copies. I know a copy is going to be tabled with you for 5 or 10 minutes to study so that you can then put the question to the House.
Yes, Honourable Members. Deputy Chief Whip, was those amendments distributed?
Unfortunately, the honourable member was not in the House when I distributed the copies of the amendments.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Thank you.
So the amendments have been distributed. We are going to continue.
Chair, I rise on a point of order. Just to put the record straight, I never moved out of the House. So I think it's devoid of the truth if the Honourable Chief Whip, Acting Chief Whip, says that I was not in the House. So that is for the record.
Yeah. No, thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member, the amendment complies with the rule, right? We received it, we looked at the amendments, and we followed the due process according to the rules. So those are the amendments currently in front of the House. Honourable Dudley, why do you want to rise?
The ACDP would like to also say that these amendments need to be carefully considered before we actually vote on them. Thank you.
We are actually going to vote on it now. Honourable Members, I now put the amendments as put by the ANC. Are there any objections to those amendments?
House Chairperson,
Yes.
would like to speak on the amendment, please.
I will now allow political parties to speak to the amendments, and I will allow up to 3 minutes per political party to make their input in this regard. The Democratic Alliance.
House Chairperson, thank you very much. Both the motion and the amendments themselves fundamentally misdiagnose where the real problem lies with land reform in South Africa. What these essentially are lazy shortcuts to resolve the problem. The high-level panel report, which this Parliament commissioned, and extensive amounts of money and public input was received from that high-level panel report, headed up by Mr. Kalema Btlante, did a very good diagnosis of where the obstacles to land reform actually are. They found quite clearly that Section 25 of the Constitution, which at Section 25.5 and at Section 25.8 fundamentally provide already for equitable redistribution of land. You don't need to amend the Constitution for what we are requiring to do today, as this amendment needs to do. Where the problems lie, as the high-level panel found, was elite capture of land reform, the fundamentally broken legislative framework and the lack of an overarching framework for meaningful land reform in South Africa. Where it also found is that this government, for the last 25 years, has not put its money where its mouth is. They've spent last year 0.14% of the national revenue on actually providing land reform. It's been on a rapid decline since the 2008-2009 financial year. That is not a failure of the Constitution. It is a failure of government. It is a failure of implementation. This government, over the course of the last 25 years, has failed to introduce meaningful land reform. Absolutely failed to do that. And what is happening today with this motion? This motion is actually giving this side of the House, this government that has failed for 25 years, the opportunity to get a get-out-of-jail-free card. They can now wash away the sins of failure of their own policies, of their own legislation, and simply wash it away by blaming and scapegoating the Constitution. There's nothing in the Constitution as it currently stands to prevent anybody in the House doing what they've spoken about today. And we must be very, very careful when we start to pull away at the underpinnings and the threads that bind our Constitution together. Because once we start to unpick them, there is going to be further problems down the line. When we erode the rights of some, we erode the rights of all going forward. And so we say we must have meaningful land reform. We cannot deny the dispossession of both colonialism and apartheid. Various legislative proposals, the Glen Grey Act, the Pegging Act, the Group Areas Act, the Native Land Act of 1913. These are all legislative processes which cause dispossession, and we must address these. But we can do it by passing legislation as the Constitution envisages. We don't need to amend the Constitution. Thank you.
The Honourable Shivambu.
No, thank you very much, House Chair. It is not unconstitutional to amend the Constitution. It's actually a constitutional practice to amend the Constitution. And this is what this Parliament is supposed to do. From time to time as Parliament, we must sit and look into the base document that has constituted this House, that organizes society, and check if that is the appropriate means upon which we must go forward. It's clear now that majority of black political parties are saying that the Constitution is not helping us adequately when it comes to dealing with the land question. So the DA can express its own views in terms of their own racial and class prejudices. But the fact of the matter is that we should ultimately expropriate land without compensation. We agree with the amendment as proposed in the context that instead of the ad hoc committee which we had proposed should look into this, we should instead use the Constitutional Review Committee, which is a joint committee inclusive of members of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. And that committee must engage in public consultations, get submissions, and then come in August to table a report to say that these are parts of the Constitution that we must amend. These are certain legislations that we must align so that we enable the state to expropriate land without compensation. So that is the context within which we are dealing with all of these issues. And we do not have fundamental problem with the characterization that we are dealing with the original sin. So the amendment clearly puts that into context, that we are dealing with the original sin of land dispossession, of our people being taken out of their own land. And apartheid and land dispossession was a legislated reality. So we have to use our legislative powers, our constitution-making powers to undo the injustices of the past. And if we do not do so, we'll be failing the many generations of people who died fighting in the wars of resistance. We'll be failing so many people who died fighting for the freedom, who were incarcerated, were imprisoned, were exiled because they wanted their land back. So we must continue to work clearly and decidedly as black political parties to reclaim our land. Is the way to.
The IFP.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Honourable Chairperson and colleagues, firstly, congratulations to all the new ministers that have been appointed. When our colleague, Honourable Kebekulu, spoke here, he did say that we would support a process of land reform and land restitution. It's absolutely necessary in a country like ours, post-apartheid, that happens. He did also say that we would support the fact that this matter be referred to the Constitutional Review Committee, which I note that this amendment takes care of. So to that extent, I think as the IFP, we are satisfied that the mechanisms that we are going to use to achieve an objective are the correct mechanisms, and it was not necessary to form an ad hoc committee to deal with this matter. However, having said that, Honourable Chairperson, I want to also concur with Honourable Steenhuisen that the process of land reform as driven by government has been far too slow and ineffective. And one really needs to look at outstanding claims that have been lodged since 1998, and there are many outstanding claims that have not been dealt with, and also look at the contingent liability to this government. And I hope the new Minister of Finance takes note of the contingent liability that this government could face to settle land claims that have already been processed by the department. We also believe that, as far as the IFP is concerned, what the Honourable President said the other day is that expropriation without compensation is part of the menu of options that will be used to deal with the issue of land restitution. And that's how we understood it, and we still understand it on that basis. We are pleased with the fact that there will be continued engagement with the public, and there'll be extensive public processes for us to achieve the eventual aim of ensuring that those of our people that have been dispossessed, and I can also add, Chairperson, that my family was dispossessed of land from a so-called white area, and we were put on a truck and moved to another area. So people who have been dispossessed of land need land returned to them, and we trust that that land would be put to best use in the interest of the economy of our country. So we would support the motion as amended and presented to us. But lastly, let me say in 30 seconds, Honourable Deputy Chief Whip, don't walk past us the next time. I noticed you giving the amendments, and we agreed that the amendments will be given to all political parties, but you walked past, maybe it was a lapse of memory, but just to put on record, Honourable Chairperson, why I asked for the copy was exactly so that we could run through it, but we will support the amendments as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Kubisa.
House Chairperson, thank you very much. Honourable members, we must also reiterate the fact that we support the amendment, and we also cognizant of the fact that the amendment with the original resolution do tally. The issue of land reform is a historical fact. The kings, some of the kings were incarcerated in jail because of this issue. For instance, if you talk of the Isilo Umamonga Osut, who had to go to jail because of this issue of land. So it's really an emotive issue, and it cannot be delayed. We therefore want to concur with the resolution, and that it must be done within the ambit of the Constitutional Review Committee, because our people do need land for farming, agricultural purposes, as a subsidy and commercial, but it should not delay. We really support it, and we say it must be done within the ambit of law. And the time frame has been set. As such, the National Freedom Party agrees with it. I believe, therefore, if we follow all these processes in line with the resolution and also the amendment, I believe that we will eventually reach the destination we support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now call on the Honourable Fultane.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. We are running late. We cannot accurately predict what's going to happen next year. We have to move with haste and do the necessary. The people are starving out there. The socio-economic situation out there commands that we move with this right now. As per a report that we got in the Portfolio Committee for Agriculture 3 years ago, that 95% of food produced in South Africa comes from only 3% of commercial farmers. We need more land so that more people can produce food for themselves, for selling to those who want the food. We want the land. There's no question of doubt about it. And remember the frontier wars that were fought in the 18th century, bloody wars in the Eastern Cape. 10 of them over a period of 100 years. That land that we want back is dripping with blood of Africans butchered in their own land. Where else would that have happened? We need to move with haste. Now, lastly, Honorable Chair, I want to say as the UDM, we stand right behind the involvement, of the Constitutional Review Committee in the process. That's the amendment that we support. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Groenewald.
Voorzitter, the Freedom Front Plus will not support this amendment. Once you've opened the gate, you will not be able to close it again. And I want to say to all landowners in South Africa today, you must take note what is happening in this house today. Take note. Daar is liggelowige mense wat dink dat die proses sal nooit deurgaan nie, want die agbare president Cyril Ramaphosa het mos gesê, die ekonomie moet nie geskaad word nie en voedselsekerheid moet nie benadeel word nie. Ek sê vandag vir u, die ANC regering saam met sy oppositievennote gaan die grondwet verander. Hulle het 'n 2/3 meerderheid en as die grondwet eers verander het, dan gaan u eiendom kan verloor en dit kan onteien word sonder vergoeding. En dit sal alle grond wees. Of jy in 'n dorp bly en of jy op 'n plaas bly. Grondeienaars moet weet dat hierdie proses is die spreekwoordelike geval en voorbeeld van die padda in die water, maar die vlammetjie word al hoër aangejaag en jy gaan doodkook binne in daardie pot. Ek wil vir julle sê, word wakker in Suid-Afrika. Besef u dat die ANC besig is om u soos 'n luislang in te sluk en stadig maar seker dooddruk. Want eiendom is die hoeksteen van 'n ekonomie. Private eiendom bou 'n ekonomie, maar die ANC wil dit nie toelaat nie. En u, as 'n grondeienaar, as dit u erns is om u eiendom te kan behou, dan sê ek vandag vir u, u moet u stem begin dik maak. U moet u besware begin opper. En u moet u afvalligheid en apatie wat die politiek in hierdie land betref, moet u beginne eenkant sit, want u dink u is klaar met die politiek, maar die politiek is nooit klaar met jou nie. Daarom doen ek 'n beroep op u. Daar is volgende jaar 'n verkiesing. Hierdie kwessie sal bespreek word. 2 jaar gelede is die grondkwessie al op die voorgrond geplaas vir propaganda in die verkiesing. Ons sal nooit so 'n mosie kan steun nie en ons sal u beveg waar ons kan.
Your time is expired. The Honourable Lokota.
Once more, thank you, Chairperson. For starters, I'd like to say that, Honorable Mr. Malema, I was in the House when you said what you said, and I cannot not say anything about it because it might be that I endorse that. I think we should leave the matter of whether I'm an accident of history or not. I think we should leave it for generations to come. They will pass judgment. On this issue, the problem so far has been one of abject failure by the ANC-led government to utilize these instruments and to give effect to the progressive realization of land reform rather than to impediments created by the Constitution. This is borne out in Parliament's high-level panel report, which reveals that, one, the report on the progressive realization of land reform rights has been concerning and slow, that the development of policy and law has drifted away from its initial pro-poor stance and lacks a vision for inclusive agrarian reform. Three, that there are also significant gaps, such as on tenure security, where legislation has not been passed, putting the lives and livelihoods of many rural dwellers in peril. Fourthly, that government's interpretation of customary law centered on traditional leadership and away from living customs has added to insecurity. The report makes comprehensive recommendations and calls for crucial interventions, but nowhere does the panel report call for the amendment of the Constitution. Yes, it is true that constitutions may be amended, but there must be sufficient, firm grounds why you need to do so. This is a living document. It speaks about progressive realization of the objectives in a number of different. Section 25, Section 26, it speaks about progressive realization, recognizing that you cannot solve inside of 5 or 10 years or 20 years many other issues that are involved in this question. Those will take time, but time ahead is not as much as what is behind us is finished. We must look into the future, and that's what this document is based on. I thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Next speaker is the Honourable Dudley.
Thank you, Chair. The ACDP agrees that we must move without delay and that land reform is crucial. It must be our top priority, but successful land reform is just as crucial, or we will further disadvantage the very people we want to make reparations to. The ACDP is convinced that if we do away with all legal protection against state abuse, every person in South Africa will be vulnerable and is at risk of being dispossessed once again. Maybe not this government, but there will be governments to come. And when you find yourself on the wrong side of the politics of the day, your land, your future land ownership and your security will be threatened. We will not support expropriation without compensation for the sake of every person in South Africa.
Honourable Gordy.
Izwi lethu. What a wonderful day it is today. For all the time since 1984, when I became an Africanist, to listen to this kind of debate. And what the best way to remember Robert Sobukwe today than to demonstrate to him that his life's work is about to come to fruition. Comrades, our understanding is that a constitution is always a reflection of the political balance of forces. And the constitution that we have coming out of 1996 reflected that balance of force. And this same constitution envisages that it must be reviewed on an annual basis. So it is indeed not unconstitutional to review the constitution. But I do want to say, comrades, that the way we handled this debate and the way we are handling the amendments, I think lays the ground and sows the seeds for black solidarity. Because as blacks, we have nothing to lose but our landlessness when we unite. We know that landlessness is actually the basis for the racism that our people suffer. It is the basis for our poverty, the basis of our humiliation, the basis of the dehumanization of the natives, as Frans Fanon said. So as the APC, We support the amendments, support the motion. Let's pass it. Izwelet.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Tluama.
Honorable Chairperson, today we are speaking with pride. We support these amendments. Unlike in other countries where they choose arms, here we choose constitutional process. Honorable Statesman, if you are defeated, accept it with a smile. Sometimes, I don't know why black South Africans vote other parties. Because really, if these parties are not supporting a motion like this, I don't know what is it that black people are looking for in those parties. Honorable members, honorable Statesman, I truly, when I was listening to you there, I've diagnosed a sickness of your party. I've really observed that your constituency is in America and Britain, and your heart and conscience is not here. I just want you to understand very clear that those who benefited by taking over the lands of our people, they are very lucky because they are still alive in this country and rich. In other countries, people like you are running away. But here, because we believe in negotiations, we believe in Ubuntu, you are still wealthy. You were wealthy before democratic dispensation. You are even wealthy today. Our people are still traveling from Diepsloot, Alexander to your houses. But yet, this is their democracy. You must actually kneel down and pray us today and say, you black people, you are very kind. And I don't say this quite often. You are very lucky to be in this country and still be accepted as a citizen of this country.
Point of order.
Honourable Tluama, will you take your seat? Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
It's Rule 85, Chair. It's completely inappropriate for the individual to both racially stereotype. We've had... No, he has. He's saying that you people, to be in this country, that's racial stereotyping, and to reflect on the honour of individual members of the House. I'm a South African. I hold no other passport.
Thank you. Honourable Tluama, that you
Honourable Speaker,
no, just take your seat, please. I just want to deal with this point of order. No, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Honourable Tluama, did you refer to any member of the House?
I don't know what is he talking about.
Honourable Member, did you refer to any member of the House? Yes or no? No. Thank you. Honourable Ndlozi?
No, Honourable Chairperson, there's nothing about race and racial stereotype to say you are lucky to be a citizen of South Africa. Even as a black person, I feel lucky to be part of this community.
Honourable Ndlozi?
If you don't feel lucky,
I've dealt with the point
we
before.
question your patriotism.
Thank you.
If you don't feel lucky to be part of us.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Please.
Honourable Tluama?
Honorable Chairperson, black people for 400 years tolerated abuse, rape, theft, everything that is bad you can think about. But we've forgiven. We just want you to peacefully and legally give this land back to its own owners. What's wrong with you?
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order, Honourable Members. Order, Honourable Members. May I just remind the guests in the gallery that you are here to observe and not to participate in the proceedings of the House, please. I now recognize the Honourable Minister Nkwinti.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. That is the essence of this motion by the Honourable Malema. He has not said everyone else must go jump everywhere else. He says South Africa belongs to all who live in it, and therefore all South Africans must share equitably to the proceeds of their country. It cannot be. That's what is the essence of this thing is. At last, the ANC, which has been reluctant to do this, I really must commend the honorable members on behalf of the ANC. The ANC has been reluctant for 23 years to come to this point where it says what it is saying today in terms of this resolution. The ANC has always been, is recognized across the world as a very patient movement for the liberation of the people of South Africa. Now, we have reached this point that says, let us persuade fellow South Africans. Let them too recognize that as South Africans, they've got a duty to fellow South Africans. It cannot be correct that all the time, the black majority of South Africans who have been suppressed for all these hundreds of years must always be the ones who kowtow to the minority of South Africans. It is not correct. Clause 4, lastly, Honorable Chair. Clause 4 here, it says amend clause 10. Rather, point 4 says amend clause 10 as follows. With the concurrence of the NCOP, instructs the Constitutional Review Committee. This is an institution. This is Parliament. This is a committee of Parliament. It is not saying go out there. We all have been voted here. It says this Parliament, as a representative of the people of South Africa, must use this clause, review Section 25 of the Constitution and other clauses where necessary. B, after the words amendments, it said where applicable. It is still persuasive. Let us agree that this motion must carry. It is supported by the mover in the first instance. Thank you very much, EFF.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, I now put the amendment to the motion of the Honourable J.S. Malema as moved by the Deputy Chief Whip of the majority party. Are there any objections? There are objections. I put the question. Those in favour will say aye. And those against will say no. I think the ayes have it.
Chairperson, the DA calls for division.
A division having been called, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes.
All right, well, a very good afternoon and welcome. You're watching SABC News. I'm Alicia Jali. We've just brought you the live debate on the motion on land expropriation without compensation straight from Parliament's National Assembly. Now, the issue of land has been one that is very sensitive, depending on which side of history you come from. But this debate sought to bring about solutions to the conundrum. That is how we deal with the question of land since the dawn of our young democracy. Now, the DA was opposing the motion, saying that this move poses a very serious risk to South Africa and our investors if land is indeed expropriated without compensation, and that it will take about 38 years for claims to be finalized, leaving the claimants desolate in the interim. Well, the NFP felt that there should be no debate on this issue because all parties in actual retrospect agree that expropriation needs to happen. The UDM supported this move, saying that the failure of the Constitution in addressing this is what has actually caused a long-standing debacle, while the Freedom Front Plus said that the narrative that the land was stolen should really stop because it wasn't, warning that if they continue on this course, there will be unforeseen reactions in the near future. Cope said that we shouldn't make a mistake that equality actually means dominating white people, while the ANC supported this motion, saying that they will use every mechanism as well as approach that was taken upon at the recent conference to ensure that land is returned to those who rightfully own it, adding that they are committed to building an equal society where the resources are shared amongst all those who live and work on it, but they first want to redress a historical injustice. The motion was tabled by the EFF, and those were just some quick pointers I got for you from that debate. Let's go for a quick breather now. I'll have more news just now.
News at 9. We go beyond the headlines of the day's breaking news to bring you all the angles and in-depth analysis of stories. We go beyond the surface, including on how it will impact your life. Join us every day at 9 to zoom in on the day's big stories.
When I was passing the casino, I said, that edge came, said, I'll just try, you never know. You might go home with 80,000, times 4 the amount that you have. And that stupid day, I lost all my money.
Never allow glamorous lifestyles to push you beyond your means.
The awakening moment was that 2007, when I left my children alone. I realized this is hurting me.
Ask for professional help if gambling is controlling you. Know when to stop.
I faced reality that, what, for you there's no quick reach, so you just have to work hard. So it's gone.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday at 17:30.
Order, honourable members, will you take up your allocated seats? Honourable members, will you take up your allocated seats? Order, honourable members. Honourable members, I would like to remind you that you may only vote from your allocated seat, and when requested to do so, you must simply indicate your vote by pressing the appropriate button below the yes, no, or abstain signs. If a member inadvertently presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. Order, honourable members, there's too much noise in the House. We're in a voting session. The last button pressed will be recorded as the member's vote when the voting session is closed. The question before the House is that the amendment to the motion on the order paper, as moved by the Honourable Deputy Chief Whip of the ANC, be agreed to. Are all members in their allocated seats? Voting will now commence. Those in favour of the amendment should press the yes button. Those against the no button, and those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Have all members voted? May I just ask the whippery to check on the members who have not voted so that the votes can be recorded? Order, honorable members. Don't start reshuffling now again. We want to complete the vote. Thank you. The voting session is now closed. Order, honorable members. The outcome of the division is as follows. Those in favor, 241. Those against, 83. There's no abstentions, and the amendment is therefore agreed to. Order, honorable members. I now put the motion as amended before the House. Are there any objections? There's objection. I now put the question. Those in favor will say aye. Those against will say no. I think the ayes have it.
Chair, the DA calls for division. Thanks.
A division having been called, the bells will be rung for 1 minute. The motion is amended. Okay. Order, honorable members. Order. I would like to remind you that you may only vote from your allocated seat, and when requested to do so, you must press the appropriate button below the yes, no, or abstain signs. If an honorable member inadvertently presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. And the last button pressed will be recorded as the member's vote when the voting session is closed. The question before the House is that the motion of the Honorable J.S. Malema, as amended, be agreed to. Are all members now in their allocated seats? Voting will now commence. Those in favor of the motion as amended should press the yes button. Yes. Those against should press the no button. And those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Have all members voted? Can we once again just ask the members to raise their hands if their votes were not recorded so that we can record it? Thank you, honorable members. The voting session is now closed. Honourable members, the outcome of the division is as follows. Those in favour 241, those against 83, there's no abstentions, and the motion as amended is therefore agreed to. Honourable members, we now come to motions without notice. Does any member of the ANC wish to give a motion without notice?
Yes, Chairperson.
The ANC, may I just request those members who are leaving the House to do so quietly, please? Thank you.
Thank you, House Chair. The ANC congratulates the legendary South African group, Lady Smith Black Mambaza, on winning its 5th Grammy.
Order. Honourable members, those of you who are leaving the House, do it in such a manner that you do not disrupt the proceedings of the House. Continue, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Chairperson. Group Lady Smith Black Mambaza on winning its 5th Grammy Award at Madison Square Garden in New York on Sunday, the 28th January 2018, notes that the group, which has brought a global audience to the traditional Zulu style of harmony-driven singing, known as isicathamiya, scooped the prestigious award for the Best World Music Album for its album Shaka Zulu Revisited. Remembers that over the years, Lady Smith Black Mambaza have scooped 19 nominations at the awards and have walked away with 5 so far. Recalls that Black Mambazo came to the worldwide attention when Paul Simon enlisted group for his 1986 album called Graceland, a landmark work of world music fashion, which revived the folk icon's career and won the most prestigious Grammy Award for the Album of the Year. Understands that the group decided to re-record the Shaka Zulu album in the tribute to the group's founder, Ubabu Joseph Shabalala, who has retired and handed control to his 4 sons, and congratulates Black Mambaza, the South African flag high all over the world. Siyabonga, I so move.
Honourable members, if there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. Democratic Alliance.
Thank you very much, House Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House, 1, notes the tragic passing of a national treasure, Bra Hugh Masekele, on the 23rd of January 2018. 2, acknowledges that Bra Hugh was more than just a jazz musician. He was a musical genius and a fearless activist. 3, also acknowledges that his music told the stories of our people and reflected the struggles of Black South Africans opposing apartheid. 4, further acknowledges that Bra Hugh was a proud African and a true son of the soil. We are grateful for his immense contribution to South Africa and the African continent as a whole. And 5, extends our deepest condolences to his family, his loved ones, and his South African music fraternity. Thank you.
Honourable members, if there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. The EFF.
Thank you, Chair. I move on behalf of the economic freedom fighters that the House notes that today marks 40 years since the untimely death of the colossal figure of the African liberation struggle, Mangaliso Robert Sobukwe, the founding president of the PAC. Further note that Sobukwe died a few years after he was released from a period of 9 years of solitary confinement in Robben Island, where he was kept through an evil amendment made by the Criminal Laws Amendment Act for a minister to keep a prisoner in jail indefinitely, the so-called Sobukwe Clause. Acknowledges that today, as he was silenced by the apartheid regime, Sobukwe is still marginalized and unrecognized, that his liberating ideals have been ignored, and all attempts made to erase his rich legacy from the history of our country. Further acknowledges that Sobukwe once argued, "We guarantee no minority rights, because we think in terms of individuals, not groups. Economically, we aim at the rapid extension of industrial development in order to alleviate pressure on the land, which is what progress means in terms of modern society. We stand committed to a policy guaranteeing the most equitable distribution of wealth. Socially, we aim at the full development of the human personality and a ruthless uprooting and outlawing of all forms
Honourable
of manifestations
member, your
of
time is
racial
up.
myth. But today, we say salute Sobukwe, the land is back.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. The ANC.
The ANC moves without notice that the House notes with great sadness the death of Zimbabwe's long-time opposition leader and former Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai on Wednesday, 14th February 2018, in a South African hospital at the age of 65. Understands that Tsvangirai had been in and out of hospital since disclosing in June 2016 that he had colon cancer. Remembers Tsvangirai as the veteran leader of the movement for democratic change and one of the most prominent critics of the Zimbabwean ruling party, ZANU-PF. Recalls that he was a miner for many years and he joined ZANU-PF in 1980 after Zimbabwe's independence and rose quickly through the ranks. Further recalls that in 1989, he became Secretary General of the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, emerging as opposition leader in 1997 and forming the MDC 2 years later. Acknowledges Tsvangirai for his humility and relentless determination. Conveys its heartfelt condolences to the family of Morgan Tsvangirai and all supporters of the MDC. I so move.
If there are no objections, I now put the motion. No objections, agreed to. IFP.
Thank you, Chairperson. I move without notice on behalf of the IFP that this House notes that the United Nations has urged African nations to fully implement a regional action plan aimed at ending attacks on persons with albinism. Further notes that this plan sets out clearly what states can do to end attacks on persons with albinism in African countries. Acknowledges that this plan includes 15 practical steps which are expected to go a long way in addressing the persisting and deadly challenge. Recognizes that South Africa continues to see an increasing number of attacks on those living with albinism, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, condemns the recent kidnapping and murder of the late Kabisila Shabani and a 15-month-old nephew, Nkosikona Ngwenya, from Malahleni, who was living with albinism, and her nephew, who was mistakenly assumed to have been born with albinism as well. Conveys heartfelt condolences to the Shabani and Ngwenya families. Finally urges the South African government to fully comply with the signed protocols aimed at protecting people living with albinism and to do more to ensure that the human rights of those living with albinism in South Africa are promoted and protected. I so move. Thank you.
If there are no objections, I now put the motion. No objections, agreed to. NFP.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. I move on behalf of the NFP without notice that this House notes that the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Drug Unit seized bags full of drugs, firearm and illicit cigarettes during drug enforcement operations in the Greater Durban area last week, focusing on Chatsworth, Verulam and Phoenix after extensive observation and investigations. Further notes that illegal cigarettes to the value of 62,500 was confiscated in Phoenix, as well as 2,000 capsules of heroin valued at 60,000 rand, and unlicensed pistol was confiscated, leading to several arrests. Also noted that several arrests were made in heroin and rock cocaine with a street value of 90,000 rand was confiscated, and a suspect arrested in Verulam during the operations, whilst 11 bags of dacha with estimated street value of 30,000 was confiscated in Chatsworth, as well as 800 capsules of heroin valued at 10,000 rand was confiscated. Wherefore, we call upon this House to commend the proactive conduct of KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Drug Unit and also urge local communities to work closely together with the law enforcement agencies to ensure that the social scourge of drug is addressed swiftly and decisively in our communities. I so move.
If there are no objections, I now put the motion. No objections agreed to. ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. The African National Congress congratulates the renowned South African actors John Kani and Connie Chume, who joined the Hollywood A-star icon film Black Panther. Along other African stars, Kenyan-raised Lupito Nyong'o and Zimbabwean-born Danai Gurira, and notes that in the film, Kani plays the role of the King T'Chaka, with his son, Atandwa, playing his younger version, and Chumi plays the role of a mining tribe elder. Recalls that in creating Wakanda, a secretive sub-Saharan African country, the film directors flipped the script on how Africa is portrayed in Hollywood. Understand that South African culture contributes so much to the Black Panther and inspired the first black superhero film. Further understands that one of our African indigenous languages, the isiXhosa, is spoken by inhabitants of the fictional country Wakanda in the movie, believes that the roles played by these African stars will inspire many Africans to praise their own achievements. Congratulates John Kani and his son Atandwa, as well as Connie Chume and all other African stars partaking in the Black Panther film for the excellent performance and for raising the flag of Africa high internationally. I so move.
If there are no objections, I now put the motion. No objections agreed to. I said to other colleagues earlier on that I need a sponsor for a ticket to go and see the movie. The UDM.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. This is a motion on the brutal killings of the 5 policemen and the soldier in Ngobo. I move without notice on behalf of the United Democratic Movement that the House notes with utmost grief that on Wednesday morning, the 21st of February 2018, 5 police officers, Zuko Mbini, Zuko Ncheku, Nkosi Phendulo Phonco, Sibongiseni Sandlana, and Kuhle Mthetha, and an off-duty soldier, Mbuzeni Fred Mpandeni, were brutally murdered by criminal elements in Ngobo. Further notes that 3 SABC members were shot in the Ngobo police station, while 2 additional members were kidnapped before being killed and left on the side of the road 6 kilometers away from the police station. Acknowledges that 10 firearms were stolen and a police van from the police station, which were later used to rob an ATM, a short distance away from where the call-outs and cold-blooded murder of the law enforcement officers occurred. Believes that this inhuman, gang-related and barbaric attack on the law enforcement officers is a gross and direct attack on the people's first line of defense against crime. Commends the task team on their swift action and determination for the arrest of the suspects. Conveys its deepest condolences to each of the families and colleagues of the public servants that were killed in these vicious attacks. Acknowledges the contribution by local communities in assisting and supporting the police during their pursuit of these heartless killers so that they can face the full might of the law.
If you can wind up, your time is up. You can just summarize, your time is up now.
Calls on communities to continually assist. Further calls on government to ensure that the families and colleagues that are left behind receive adequate support to deal with the loss of their loved one, as well as members of the task team who got injured on duty whilst bringing these killers to steps of justice. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections agreed to. FF plus. The DA.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes with concern that the Tabachero municipality is spending more money on their employees than on any one of the services provided to their customers. Again notes that Tabachero municipality is paying as much as 73% over its budget for salaries. Also notes that this municipality is in all probability using the profit from its electricity sales to fund salaries and other operational expenditures. Further notes that the budget for salaries is normally set at 26% of its operating budget, but the actual salary expenditure of Tabachero Municipality is running at 45% of the budget. Further notes that the municipality's salary expenditure should never exceed the recommendations as contained in the Municipal Finance Management Act. Calls upon the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs to curb irregular spending in municipalities to ensure that expenditure aligns with best practice as contained in the Municipal Finance Management Act. I so move.
If there are no objections, I now put the motion. No objection. Agreed.
ANC objects.
ANC objects. The motion falls away. The EFF. Thank you, House Chair. I hereby rise on behalf of the EFF for the House to note that in 2016, Vryburg Department of Home Affairs registered Ms. Kamohelo Maine's newborn baby under someone else's name, leaving her without a birth certificate. Note that baby Reatlehele Maine has not had a correct birth certificate for the last 2 years, and it was only after the EFF intervention that the Minister of Home Affairs was able to resolve the matter. Recognize that in the last 2 years, that baby Reatlehele did not have a birth certificate, could not access her rightful social grant, and was disadvantaged severely. Further recognize that it is not only social grant that baby Reatlehele was denied, but she was also denied access to other social services. Resolve that the Portfolio Committee on Social Development look at the case of Ms. Maine. Further resolve that the Portfolio Committee on Social Development to engage relevant authorities to assess Ms. Maine's case to ensure the suffering of the last 2 years without baby Reatlehele birth certificate is well compensated. I so move. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections. Agreed to. ANC.
The ANC moves without notice that the House notes with sadness the passing of the internationally renowned writer and struggle stalwart Professor Kiorapetsi Khositsile on Wednesday, 3 January 2018 at the age of 79. Understands that the national poet laureate, affectionately known as Brawili, has left an indelible mark on the cultural and artistic life of not only the land of his birth, but also of Tanzania, Kenya, Botswana, Zambia, and Harlem, New York. Further understands that he was a passionate Pan-Africanist whose work was infused with his commitment to the ideal of a free, prosperous, and united African continent. Recalls that Professor Khositsile was an ANC stalwart who dedicated his life to the liberation of South Africa and was a founding member of the ANC's Department of Education in 1977 and Department of Arts and Culture in 1983. Further recalls that during his time in the United States, he wrote extensively on the influence of jazz music on African American culture and on the unity of the African diaspora. Understands that this prolific and celebrated writer and poet had the prestigious Order of Ikamanga bestowed upon him by then acting President Halima Motlanthe in 2008 for his achievements
Member, if you can round
but
up
not
your
limited to literature, music, arts, and
message.
culture. Extends condolences to the Khositsile family, comrades, and friends. I so move. Thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections. Agreed to. Cope.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the Congress of the People that the House notes that on Thursday, 8 February 2018, 2 South African Police Service K9 members from Pretoria, Pretoria Estate Protection and Security Services, Sergeant Mokunyana and Constable Moraka, and their service dogs were involved in a serious and tragic accident not of their own making. Further notes that the 2 police members and their service dogs were on state of the nation duties at the time of the accident, and commiserates with the family of Sergeant Mokunyana, who tragically lost his life in the accident. I so move.
If there are no objections, I now put the motion. No objection, agreed to. ACDP? ACDP? ANC?
Thank you, House Chair. The ANC moves without notice that the House notes with sadness the death of the 17 people and the injury of 15 more, including students and adults in Florida in the United States of America, following the shooting at the high school on Wednesday, the 14th of February, 2018. Understand that a 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz has confessed he was the gunman who entered the school campus armed with an AR-15 and began shooting the student, and he saw the hallways and that he saw in the hallways on the there's something wrong here, and began to shoot the students. Further understand that the young man was arrested without incident about an hour after the attack in a neighboring town. Believe that Cruz was expelled from the Major Stoneman Douglas High School for disciplinary reasons. Further believes that when he was a student at Westglades Middle School, he was constantly in trouble for insulting teachers and staff, using profanity, disruptive behavior, unexcused absence, and at least one fight. Acknowledges that investigators are looking into a possible connection of Nicholas Cruz to a white supremacist group in Florida that confirm Cruz is their member, and convey its condolences to all affected. The ANC conveys condolences to all affected families of the deceased and wish those injured a speedy recovery. I so move, Chairperson.
If there are no objections, I now put the motion. No objections, agreed to. AIC? Jais.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I hereby move on behalf of African Independent Congress that this House notes that the South African Football Association, SAFA, has appointed Desiree Ellis as Banyana Banyana coach. That her contribution in calibrating Banyana Banyana, which saw her earning 32 caps during her tenure, cannot go unnoticed. Wishes her well in her endeavor to qualify Banyana Banyana for the Women's Africa Cup of Nations, including the World Cup. Also recognizes her unique steadfastness and patience at the wake of speculations that she was likely to be overlooked. Comments Dennis Jordan for assisting her rewrite the script on the course of women empowerment. That women had got a lot of potential to lead and manage. We congratulate her on this important appointment. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. Agang SA? ANC?
Thanks, House Chairperson. The ANC moves without notice that the House congratulates 9-year-old Riabetsi Kungwana, who is living a dream of being an author, as she has already had her first book published. Further notes that the grade 4 pupil at Crawford Preparatory School in Pretoria launched a book on Saturday, 17 February 2018. Understands that the book titled Stories You Have Never Heard Before is a collection of 10 short stories based on her everyday experiences, each highlighting different morals which Riabetsi hopes will inspire children of her age. Further understands that her natural ability to express her thoughts on paper and love for words was the reason she wrote. Recalls that her first story written when she was 7 years old, titled Vanessa the Sad Seahorse, forms part of the 10 stories. Acknowledges that Riabetsi's dream has always been to be an author and a dancer, and today she is an author and a great dancer. Believes her commitment and dedication to her dreams will serve as inspiration to all young South Africans, and congratulates Riabetsi on her achievements and for living out her dream successfully. Thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. APC? PAC, DA.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes that the International Parliamentary Union Constitution article states that the IPU shall contribute to the defense and promotion of human rights, which are universal in scope and respect, for which is an essential factor for parliamentary democracy and development. Further notes that at its 137th Assembly in St. Petersburg, the Standing Committee on Democracy and Human Rights, of which I am a member, unanimously took a decision to debate LGBT rights. Acknowledges that on the floor of the General Assembly, several countries objected to the proposed subject for a panel discussion, which led to the President of the Assembly referring the proposal back to the committee for further consideration. Further acknowledges that LGBT rights are human rights, and it's only through the sharing of ideas will we ever break down the walls of ignorance and bigotry, and calls upon the IPU to reinstate the debate on LGBT at its forthcoming meeting taking place in Geneva next month. I thank you.
If there are no objections, I now put the motion. No objections, agreed to. ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. The African National Congress moves with notice that the House notes with sadness the death of the African National Congress Johannesburg Regional Deputy Chairwoman, Connie Bapela, who was the wife of a cooperative governance and a traditional affairs Deputy Minister Obed Bapela, on Friday, the 16th of February 2018, following a short illness. Further notes that Connie Bapela is a former freedom fighter who was always a former Speaker of City of Johannesburg. Remembers that during the state of emergency in 1985, Bapela was detained and spent 3 months in Norwood police station cells. Further remember that while in jail, Bapela and other inmates helped from Operation Pambini, Operation 10 Med, where they bent their prison beds to get attention of the authorities and to be given the chance to appear in court. Recalls that Comrade Bapela joined the City of Johannesburg in 1995 and served on several committees, including the position of the Speaker in the Council, a position she occupied until 2016. Acknowledges that Comrade Connie was a dedicated, committed, and disciplined ANC cadre. Believes that her death came at a critical time as an ANC member in Gauteng, where they were fighting hard to enhance the effective service delivery to all the citizens of South Africa. ANC conveys heartfelt condolences to the Bapela family and the people of Johannesburg. I so move.
If there are no objections, I now put the motion. No objections, agreed to. That concludes motion without notice. We now move to the member statements. Does any member of the ANC wish to make a statement? Yes, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Chairperson.
One of the members there, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairperson. The African National Congress congratulates the matric class of 2017 for achieving an outstanding overall pass rate of 75.1% in the year 2017 National Certificate Examination. These matric outcomes demonstrate a commendable upward improvement from a previous figure of 72.5% in 2016 and 70% rate achieved in 2015. This achievement, the ANC believes, is the outcome of a year of dedication and determination by the learners, educators, parents, and other education stakeholders of a concerted period of time, all of whom should be justifiably proud of the fruits and their efforts. The ANC specifically commends the Free State province for once again being named a top province with almost 90% pass rate. Such consistent excellence must remain an inspiration for all, and is also pleased by the reported increase in the results of Eastern Cape, Limpopo, and KwaZulu-Natal.
Honourable
whose
member, your
performance
time is up.
is indicative. I thank you.
Thank you. The Democratic Alliance. Mazamba.
Ngiyabonga Sihlalo. VAT and petrol prices didn't have to go up. These proposed tax hikes are an attack on all South Africans, but the poor and unemployed South Africans in particular.